please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. This has included a request for all attendees to have taken an LFD test, which I have done this morning, within 48 hours of the meeting, the use of the NHS Track and Trace app or attendee log, 2 metre social distancing, the wearing of masks when not seated, a one-way system in the Guildhall and a temperature check upon arrival. I think we'll scrub that one next time. Limited public seating has been made available, however this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face covering unless seated. Please only use seats marked with a green circle. These seats have been allocated to ensure 2 metre social distancing. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. And may I draw everyone's attention to the fact this meeting will be live streamed. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations, unless you request otherwise. So you need to make that very clear. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and then remember to switch them off when they're finished. So in front of you is a little panel. There's a black button there right now. You just depress it. It will come up red. That means you're on, as it were. Okay? I'm going to go around and get us all to introduce ourselves, particularly for the deputations and anybody else who's here this morning, so everybody knows who everyone is. So you've heard who I am. I'll start with my right, we'll go round the back, and then we'll go on the inner circle. Okay? Over to you.
Good morning all, I'm Juliette Gill, I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor. I'm here to advise the committee.
Good morning everybody, I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Ward Councillor for Baffins.
Okay, to you sir as well.
Hello, I'm Councillor Williams, here to read a deputation.
If we go to the back, that's it.
Hello, I'm Mrs Wood. I'm here today to give a deputation.
Thank you Mrs Wood and welcome.
Good morning, I'm Natasha Yoza, I'm the art consultant at Court X.
At where, sorry?
Court X.
Okay, yes sir.
For deputation.
Go again, we missed that.
Hi, I'm John Cook, I'm here for a deputation.
Thank you. And since we're in the deputations, we'll go down here.
I'm William Freemantle and I'm here for a deputation.
I'm Joan Gale-Chambers and I'm here for a deputation.
You're backing him up by the look of it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Madam at the back.
My name's Rebecca Sutcliffe and I'm here to make a deputation.
At the back.
I'm Jeff Hawkins and I'm here to make a deputation.
Anna Martin, Local Democracy Officer.
Nick Lloyd Davis, I'm the New Neighbourhoods Team Leader in Development Management.
I'm Eze Ekeledo, Head of Development Management.
We'll go to Councillor New now.
Councillor Rob New, represent Cobham Ward.
Good morning, Chair. Chris Atwell, St Thomas Ward and Vice Chair of the Committee.
Good morning, both. And Councillor, the Leader of the Council, Councillor Gerald Vernon-Jackson.
Hello, I'm Gerald Vernon-Jackson. I'm a Milton Ward Councillor.
Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward.
Thank you very much indeed. We're a bit light on members at so far this morning. I've received apologies so far from Councillor Matthew Atkins, Councillor John Smith. Councillor Hooper is going to come, but about 11 a.m. she has another commitment, and we're a bit light on Councillor Fielding. If those members of the groups could lean on their own members, just remind them to try and get standing deputy, that'd be very helpful, because otherwise we're going to end up with abandoning the meeting, possibly. Okay.
Chair, my apologies, I need to be elsewhere at 2 o'clock.
I suspect we will be finished around that time.
You're optimistic as always.
Yeah, no, we will. Declarations of members' interests. Anybody got any interest? Know anybody or worry about anything that they need to ask any legal advice about? Very good. So, Ezzy, we're going to go to the minutes of the previous meeting on the 18th of August. Anybody want to propose them? I've read them. Thank you, Councillor Giovanni-Jackson. They're agreed then.
Can I ask a matter arising?
Yeah, go ahead.
Site visit, have we got a date confirmed?
Chair, we're assembling the protocol at the moment, so it should be ready before the end of the week.
Thanks for that reminder, Councillor Giovanni-Jackson. Update on the previous applications, NSE.
Thank you, Chair. At this current moment, we've received 3 decisions from the planning inspector. That's with regards 27 Gate Hall Walk in Portsmouth, and that's with regards to application for a prior approval relating to change of use of first and second floor from offices to a 10 number 1-bedroom self-contained flat. The inspector had dismissed the appeal and equally refused the award of cost put by the appellant. And then we have for 118 Prince Albert Road, South Sea, and that's for a change of use from a house in multiple occupation class 4 from 6 to 7 person, 7-bedroom in multiple occupancy, which is in sui generis, and the council had refused this. The inspector has again sided with the local planning authority in dismissing the appeal. We then have finally an enforcement notice appeal for 45 Linden Avenue in Portsmouth. That is pending. The case summary, it's with us planning permission, the construction of a red dormer clad in non-matching materials to the roof tile of the property and the alteration to the first floor rear projection to facilitate the creation of a red dormer by the placement of the pitched roof with a flat roof and the increase in height of the eaves. There is the updates, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. We have a... Councillor Giovanni-Jackson.
Sorry, just in relation to the last one, I didn't know that was going to come up at this meeting. That's a couple of doors away from me, so I had nothing to do with that application.
Okay,
that's 45 Lindley Avenue.
That's noted. Okay, so members, continue always to test when HMOs come along the internal room sizes, how they relate to each other, and how the communal space adds up. Even sometimes we discover, don't we, that sometimes these things don't actually add up, and we've been getting it right, consistently right, as the planning inspectors seem to agree with us. Okay then, so now we go straight on to item number 5, which is in your package of reports, which is the New Centre, London Road, Hillsea. For those of you who were here last time, it's number 1 in your reports. It was deferred in order to investigate further the illuminated sign and its location. So the officers will give their report now. Who's doing this one?
I will be doing that, Chair.
Thank you, Ezzy. Go
Thank you
ahead
very
then.
much, yes. Members, can I refer yourselves to the supplementary planning supplement matters that was sent across, which puts across the paragraph 1.5 of the original report, which states the depth of the proposed signage at 0.2 meters in depth. Officers' recommendations remains unchanged. We've got a deputation which myself would read out. The deputy had requested for this as they are unable to attend. As Chair, as you rightly referred to, this was an item that was presented to the Planning Committee on the 18th of August and was a resolution to defer to the next available Planning Committee to allow for further information relating to the previous planning advert consent to be presented to members for consideration. Members, if I'd refer yourselves to the report, especially in paragraph 0.2, where it stated the reference number of the advert consent that was granted in 2007, and also the drawing that states shows where the advert was located or was proposed to be located, and that is about 31 meters north of the is proposed signage that is now before members for consideration. And again, it's at a higher level and further from the neighbor that's put in a deputation. Our understanding is that the applicant is willing to conform with the required illumination levels and also to have reduced operating hours for the signage. The issue of visual and oral amenity impact upon public amenity and safety had been further considered by officers, and our views recommendation to members is that conditional advert consent to be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Ezzy, with the reduced operating hours, is this different to what we heard about last time?
I believe so, Chair. Yes, sir.
Chair, to help, it's 1 hour less at night. Instead of an 8 o'clock finish, it's a 7 o'clock
which
finish.
is what we talked about last time. We also talked about also talked about an externally illuminated sign, but understand they're not really interested. So that's the deputation done. Thank you, Ezzy.
Can I read the deputation?
Yeah, I beg. Sorry, I thought you had. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Apologies, we cannot attend today in person. Mrs. Smith attended the last meeting and put forward the deputation then, but cannot be here today due to work commitments. We, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, strongly object to the requested location of the signage. It is being requested in a location set back and sheltered by trees from the main road, so it wouldn't provide any real advertisement benefit to passing trade from the main road, and will only be visible to vehicles that have pulled into the news center and are waiting at the barrier to gain entry. See pictures submitted. This location is to the far right side and is set back from the main building, meaning it is very visible from our whole garden and to the neighboring properties in York Terrace. However, due to the angle of our property, we are mostly affected. Number 4 has also raised similar concerns about this, but didn't formally object. There are very large trees located on the right side along the entrance into the news center. To one side of our garden, shading us from the lot of the news building. It's currently a light gray building, so not too overpowering visually, but the requested location of this sign is after the large trees end, and due to the high location and angle of the building, it will be very visible. And I saw and would be a dominant feature from our property. I have provided photos from our garden, and it may not be clear from the commercial property just how visible it will be from our gardens in York Terrace, but the height and location are the issue. We strongly believe both the position of the signage and the requested lighting will be unreasonably and substantially interfere with the use and enjoyment of our home and our garden. We spend a lot of time with our young family outside. It will be visible and overpowering from every angle in our garden. We wouldn't be able to escape it. From our back door, the sign will be located directly in front and will be a statutory nuisance. At night, we fear it will cause light pollution, be obstructive light, and that we will lose natural nighttime in the garden. We are also very concerned that at night, the light will become nuisance light into our young child's bedroom that faces towards it. I believe this should be covered by the Environmental Protection Act 1990 and the Clean Neighborhoods and Environmental Act 2005. We have also considered if there was anything we could do to block the visibility of the intended sign from our property. But due to the high location and angle of the sign, there is nothing we can do to protect our privacy and block any views from any harmful views from a sign. We feel this makes us helpless in this matter, and it feels like it will greatly impose on our right to enjoy our property and garden. The previously approved planning application in 2007 was partly approved, partly declined. The west elevation was approved, a location on the main front aspect of the building, and for a conditional time period of 5 years only. The application for the north elevation was declined due to it being considered inappropriate in terms of location, siting, and form of illumination, and would thereby cause unacceptable harm to visual amenity on the context of the residential frontage to Military Road, contrary to policy DC-24 of Portsmouth City Local Plan 2001 to 2011. There's a bracket taken from planning letter page 3, bracket closed. There are many alternative locations much more visible from the road at the front of the building to provide greater advertisement benefit. That this could be placed as to not impact or interfere on residential properties, gardens, and bedrooms. And this needs to be taken into consideration. There ends the deputation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezzy. Members, any questions? Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Thanks very much. It's useful, I think, that they've reduced the hour at night when it'll shut down from, instead of being 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock. In terms of the reference to the previous application being turned down, could you let me know what's the difference between the decision made a few years ago to not grant planning permission and the recommendation from yourselves to grant planning permission for a sign in the same place? What's changed?
Thank you, Councillor. What has changed is the one that was declined advert consent was to the north of the building on the Ministry, facing the residential properties to the north of the site. What you have currently, on what was approved, partly approved, was to the west, which is the same orientation, the same side to the west as the one that is before us today. The major difference is that the current proposal intends to put the advert, the signage, due south of that which was approved in 2007, 30 meters due south of it, but it's still on the same west elevation. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Members, any other questions? Councillor Lindstag.
Thank you, Chair. Can somebody explain to me what a maximum light level of 450 CD per metre squared is? I mean, how bright is that?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm no specialist in illumination, unfortunately, but I believe that is a standard illumination levels that is put as guidance for signage, so as not to have an impact on amenity and oral, to have less impact on oral effect on residents and users and observers. Thank you.
And then lastly, Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if the planning officers would just be able to let us know if there are any plans within these plans in terms of the trees that are outside to the front of the building. Just for context, I do know this site very well because I used to live in Military Road 3 years ago, and you can't actually see any of the signage from the main road. It's been alluded to in some of the deputations. So is that going to be taken into consideration as well? And will there be an impact around, because they're quite full-grown trees, around tree orders, etc. on the site?
Can we have the presentation up? Thank you. Can you go back a bit? Thank you very much. Can you just take a step? Yeah, that one's fine. Thank you. So that gives a context of the trees that are to the, I believe, to the deputies, part of the rear garden. But I believe also there's a square that is fenced off just in front of the application site. If you just go back, slide back, and walk back more. Yep, that one. Thank you. And so there are a couple of trees, and we can see to the right-hand side, there are a couple of trees there. The form is almost a tree belt. Not exactly sure how much was the length of the tree belt, but it's a collection of trees there. I can see about 3 stems. But then we see the square, and if one wants to go, slide backwards again, just back. Yes, thank you. So if one wants to look at the area and location plan, again, that square is there, and then you have the green, simply green veg to the on the bottom southwest corner of that red border line, which I believe is the home of the deputy. Again, you see a bit of trees there, and so where we have the signage is to the bottom end of that building there, that unit. So the white element there, so that's where the signage would be as shown there. That is reflected in the following slides. Just can you go back a bit? Forward. Yeah, thank you. So that will be where the signage is. Crucially, what can be noticed there is that the signage, it's at an angle to the property of the deputy, and I've measured this, it's around about 30 plus meters from the edge of their property. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. You didn't answer my question. A yes or no would have sufficed, whether there's any plans to actually deal with the trees, because just to add some further context, the photos that are displayed here are taken during like winter time when there's no leaves on the trees. I was up there yesterday. They do not look like that currently, the ones on the main road. And that's why I asked the question, because at the moment, if that sign was to go up, you can't actually see that sign. You can't see that elevation from the main road. That's why I asked if there were plans to perhaps remove trees and what the impact of that might be. So yes or no would have sufficed.
Yes, there's no plans, Councillor. Thank you.
Can I ask then, are there street lights between the objector's house and the proposed site?
There are street lights that I can pick out from the photos, yes.
Yeah. How many? Oh, I see.
There are a couple of street lights to the rear.
Okay.
Thank you.
But of course, we try and push those down. We try and push the light pollution downwards, don't we, where this comes out. Yeah. Okay, members, any comments then? Was it a comment or a question?
How accurate is, in this first, in the pack we've got, this first photograph, how accurate is the placing of the sign there? It's drawn in pink, because presumably that photograph is taken from the objector's garden. So there are no trees, there's one tree but to the left, but there are no trees that are actually blocking the garden. They may block, as Councillor New says, the view from the road, but they don't appear to be blocking the sign from the garden, and therefore from the house, which presumably is this side of it. So is that accurate?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think the photo there is a panoramic photo that was taken, a view that was taken. It's a panoramic view that was taken. It was gradually taken while moving across the area. So it's not giving a definite view from one particular location. So it's meant to capture a wider view.
It's not taken from the objector's garden?
It is taken from the objector's garden, but it's meant to capture a wider view. So it's not one that you could pinpoint where exactly they are stood taking that photo.
I'm not sure I understand, but okay, thank you.
Well, this has been gone into at great length a couple of times now. Councillor Gerald Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I think our hands are very much tied on the basis the planning application was granted for a sign on this location or very close to this location before. I'm pleased that we've been able to negotiate the time when it will be lit so that it stops being lit at 7 o'clock at night, so a young family won't have any light after 7 o'clock at night into their garden, but I don't think if a planning application for a similar sign has been granted, it would seem to me unlikely we would be able to sustain a refusal at appeal, and therefore it seems to me the logical thing is to go with the officer's recommendation, which I'm happy to propose.
Do you know, I think we have tried very hard to reduce the impact on the neighbours opposite. I think Councillor Bernard Jackson's correct. We would be on hiding to nothing if we did chuck it out, but that doesn't impact me. I think with the lights in between the trees described by Councillor New, we have to approach this in a reasonable way. So I'll second that proposal to give conditional consent. But Ezzy, any other comments you'd like to make before we go to the vote?
No, Chair, thank you very much.
Are there any other councillors who would like to make any other proposition in any way? Right. So can I see all of those with the hours, reduced hours, can I see those who approve this report? 1, 2, 3, 4, and those abstaining? 2. Thank you very much indeed, members. So we move on now to item number 2, which is construction of a logistical store building to include solar panel array to the roof. Who's doing this one, ladies and gents?
I am, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ezzy.
The application put forward to members comes with the updates to the SMART, which we received consultation response from Natural England, who have raised no objections subject to appropriate mitigation being secured. And also the ecology appraiser confirms potential effect on the SPA. In terms of visual disturbance, no further mitigation is required. No objection relating to noise, subject to the use of the SR-65 EVO, the hydraulic rotary rig or similar, and noise levels not exceeding 70 dB. This just submitted CEPM would ensure no harm caused through pollution, runoff, dust or debris. Recommendation remains unchanged. There's no deputation that I'm aware of for this item, Chair. The application is for the building at 209 Shipbuilding Road in Portsmouth, and that's construction of a logistical store building to include solar panel array to the roof. The main issues before members are the principle of proposal, scale, design, appearance.
Sure. Are there any slides to go with this? Because we're not seeing them.
Apologies. Thank you. The main determining issues for this application relates to the principle of the proposal, scale, design, appearance, and impact on heritage assets, access and parking, ecology, contaminated land, and drainage. The site in question, as shown on this slide, lies adjacent to the shipbuilding road within the HMA Her Majesty's Naval Base. The site was formerly occupied by a large warehouse building, which was attached to the Grade 2 listed shipbuilding to the east. The former workshop was demolished following the granting of listed building consent in 2008, and tower structures were retained each corner of the site. The towers are considered to be listed by virtue of their previous physical attachment to the listed shipbuilding. The site itself is identified as employment land and is an area of potential for contamination and below-ground archaeology. As stated, the proposal is for construction of a new logistical storage building which provide warehouse storage facilities, support the new Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carriers, and the building will measure 56 meters in length and 49 meters in width and 9.8 meters in height. And we'll have an overall floor space of 2,613 square meters. The roof, can you move the slide? Can you move it again? Thank you. The roof will comprise a double shallow pitch and will incorporate a row of photovoltaic panels on each of the roof slopes. The building will be set in from the side boundaries by varying degrees and will not be attached to the retained listed towers or chimneys. There's no car parking proposed within the site. The elevation will be clad in metal cladding, and there will be two roller shuttle doors and 2 pedestrian entrances on the west elevation. Can you move to the next slide? We've received consultation responses from our conservation officer who considers the level of harm generated by the proposed scheme on heritage is considered to be neutral, and the scheme is supported in conservation and heritage terms. We've received no adverse comments from other statutory consultees. The ecology advisor has suggested further works to be looked into, and the condition is recommended in regards of that. With regards to the principle of proposal, the site is within the Her Majesty's Naval Base and will be protected for developments that meets the needs of the Ministry of Defence. And in respect to that, the principle is supported, subject to other material considerations being taken into consideration. As members will see from the reports, the other material considerations have been considered by officers, and we are confident that the proposed development would provide important storage facilities for the operation of the naval base and would accord with our local plan. The design and layout is considered acceptable and will preserve the setting of the adjacent listed building and conservation area. And they are subject to conditions. The development will comply with relevant policies and is therefore recommended to members for conditional permission. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Azim. Members, any questions? Councillor Smythe.
Is there a slide of the elevation of the property from any angle? I don't think there is there?
Of the existing site?
No, of the proposal.
This is this one.
Is it? I mean, I know it's to be it's mainly for warehousing purposes, I understand, but is it going to be in any way an acceptable working environment for people? Is there any daylight into the place, or any fresh air into the place? And I understand if it's literally just for storage, it may not be very long, but with the towers around it and apparently the walls, historic walls behind it, does it have any way of being adequately ventilated for workers today?
Thank you, Councillor. Under the building regs, it would have to meet those requirements. I would not believe that Her Majesty's Ministry of Defence would not cater for its staff. I believe that that's been taken into consideration in the design of this facility.
Yes, I don't think we're accustomed to taking these things just from reputation. And in any event, the Navy have got a very long track record of keeping lots and lots of underage people in the bowels of their ships. So I'm not sure that I can accept that. I mean, is it going to be an acceptably safe environment with fresh air and preferably daylight coming in? It could change that by making it slightly smaller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I would trust Her Majesty's Ministry of Defence in regards to the storage for this facility. Thank you.
Okay, I think to the union would have something to say if there was a problem. Councillor Vernon-Jackson, any questions?
No, but when it comes to comments, I'm happy to make a recommendation.
Any other questions, anyone? Councillor Vernon-Jackson then.
Well, I note as a touching faith in the Minister of Defence, which I doubt will be shared by anybody, knowing what people in the forces have to put up with. But this is a warehouse which is needed within the dockyard. The more I find out about the dockyard, the more interesting it is, and it not only provides warehousing for stuff that is necessary for running of the Navy, but for instance it contains all the stores and food for all the forces that are deployed around the world. So it's a very important part of what the dockyard does. I think this is entirely entirely supportable. This is an industrial area and with an industrial building within it and building on the industrial heritage of the dockyard. One of the great things about it is we don't just have the historic buildings and the historic Navy, we have the working Navy there as well. So we don't just have HMS Victory, but we have the aircraft carriers as the most modern ships from the Royal Navy. And they need the support mechanisms to make sure that the Navy can run effectively for the home of the Royal Navy. So I'm happy to propose this. It is a warehouse. It isn't hugely lovely, but warehouses tend not to be hugely lovely because they are utilitarian buildings. The bit I'm particularly pleased about is the amount of photovoltaics on the roof. The naval base is of all the naval bases and all forces properties in the country, it is the best in terms of producing renewable energy, and they have done an amazing amount to reduce their carbon footprint, and that's to be applauded, and the work of the Naval Base Commander to do that is to be supported. So I'm very happy to support this. We need to be supporting the Navy for its continuing existence here in Portsmouth, so happy to move the recommendation for approval.
Councillor Smythe.
I fully endorse what Councillor Van Jackson has said, of course, but I do think it would be better if we could put a condition on about adequate ventilation. We know now that COVID is spread by not lack of adequate ventilation. People who work in warehouses, even for the forces, are not necessarily the highest paid, and if there are all those important stores in there, there's going to be some people who spend their whole time and they need to have ventilation at the very least.
I think that's entirely sensible, and I'm very happy to support that.
So can we get some legal advice on that then, please?
I think as they advised that it was covered by building regulations, so there wouldn't be a need for a condition. Is that correct? Is that correct, Izzy?
That's correct, Jared. Thank you.
Are the building regulations updated sufficiently to take into account what we know about COVID? I don't think they have been, from my knowledge, and this is a very big area. And if you're working in the middle of it, you're going to be in need of a good condition of working if you're there 5 days a week.
Did the building regulations apply to the MOD in this way, in the same as outside of the dockyard, for example?
I think it does, in the same way they've had to come for planning permission to us, and in days of yore they didn't have to do that, which is why they demolished so many historic buildings across the city. Now they have to ask permission for things. So even if it's covered by building regulations, then it wouldn't hurt to put an informative on here. Actually, in terms of ventilation, there are not going to be that many people in it because it's a warehouse and it's just got large numbers of things. An office building will have many more people, but it doesn't hurt to put on something to say we need to make sure there's adequate ventilation to make sure that people are safe while they're working in it.
Well, a final word then from a legal advisor.
Yes, as previously advised by ESE, a condition wouldn't be appropriate. An informative could be put on.
Yes, we seem to like informatives nowadays. I'm sure the Navy have heard that. Is that all right with you, Ezzy, then? Anything else to say?
Yeah, an informative would be acceptable. And just to reassure members, the building regs itself is undergoing a review. So I'm sure they'll catch up with what the pandemic is thrown up.
All right then. Well, I think that's completely right. I mean, welcome, Councillor Hooper. I think that the defence of our country is really very important, and this obviously is a very small part in it, a small cog in a very large wheel. So I welcome everything that everybody is saying, and likewise, Councillor Vernon Jackson. It's great to see that the MOD doing their part to reduce their carbon footprint, particularly, with climate change and rising seas and so on. It is very welcome to see such a huge array of panels. I'm sure too they've heard your comments, Councillor Smythe, and perhaps somebody will write to you and reassure you that that will happen. So we should have to wait and see. Well, there we are, members. Anything else to say, Ezzy?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to second. second the proposal.
Yeah, indeed, it wasn't seconded really, was it? You're quite right. Thank you for coming in there, Councillor Atwell. So that's proposed and seconded. All those in favour of the report with the conditions attached and the missive, the informative, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So say welcome, Councillor Hooper. Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us if you've got any interests that you're aware of at this moment?
No declarations, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Councillor Joe Hooper, representing Paulsgrove Ward.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hooper. So, swiftly on to item number 3 then, and this is the land around the tennis courts. And who's introducing this one? Go ahead then.
Thank you, Chair. This item is land around tennis courts at Court X, formerly Canoe Lake Leisure, and Eastern Parade in Southsea. There are a couple of deputations for this application. I refer members to the supplementary matters, which there are a few for this. There's an amendment to condition 2, which is basically to read as follows: the permission hereby granted should be carried out in accordance with the following approved drawings and documents, including mitigation measures. Condition 3A was amended to essentially to reference UXO, or unexploded ordnance, and the addition of additional conditions in relation to soft landscaping, to secure details of these before the planting takes place, details of the final external materials to be used on the development, because they provided a range as part of the application, and confirmation of final site levels before it's brought into use. There's also reference to the response from the Council's Heritage Consultant, who has raised no objection to the proposal. A further representation has also been received since the publication of the report from 18 Cresta Court, raising concerns about a continuing erosion of the ratepayers' quality of life, no perceived economic development opportunity, southeastern corner of the subject site needs attention, could not the fort become the gallery proposed, why not the two together, lots of sea view, people can get the exercise nearer the seafront, and a precursor to stands around the tennis courts. The response of the officer is there's not considered that the development would result in adverse impacts on residential amenities of adjacent neighbours, and the existing conditions of the application site are acknowledged. Concerns over the loss of sea view, the need for and rationale behind the development, given the alternatives available in the nearby area, as well as how this use would operate alongside the tennis courts, have also been addressed in the officer's report. So I'll draw members' attention to the presentation now. The application site is located to the south of Eastern Parade, and Lumps Fort is located to the south, along with Rose Garden and Japanese Garden. There is within the red line, there's an existing tennis pavilion building and existing tennis courts. To the west, there is a listed building, Cumberland House, which is used as a museum, and there's Canoe Lake Nursery, and a range of other recreational activities around this part of Eastleigh seafront. This aerial shot shows some of these various activities. You can see the Japanese Garden, Southsea Model Village. The application site is located to the north of the Japanese Garden. If I can get my laser pointer. So this is the application site here. I should say the application site falls within protected open space, the Southsea Seafront Conservation Area, also part of the Southsea Common Registered Gardens, Grade 2. Some site photographs now. These are taken from Eastern Parade with a site on the left behind the chain link fencing. This is a view from the eastern boundary of the site. There's a footway, the site is to the left, and the cricket pitch and facilities on the right hand side. Along the southern boundary, looking east, site is on the left behind the hedge on the left hand side. You can see through the trees Cresta Court is in the far distance. And the western boundary, the site entrance building, existing pavilion, and this has a first floor cafe terrace. In terms of the proposed development slides, we've split these into two slides because it's quite a lot going on with this proposal. This is the western half of the existing site, so it essentially relates to the existing space around the tennis courts, which are currently fenced off. The proposal comprises a series of footways, tunnels, artistic features, as well as grass mounds, pond areas and lawns, and a range of planting. This is the western end. They come in through the pavilion, so access will only be through the existing pavilion and during its open hours, which is until 9 p.m. every night, and that's already controlled by planning condition from when that pavilion was granted. People will, I believe, walk to the left and then follow their way around the site. Go to the next slide. Through the pergola along the northern boundary, they come to a series of additional grass mounds. The busiest part of the site is in the southeast corner, where there is a pond shown in blue. There is along the southern part of the site here, there is a raised walkway which is goes to about 1.5 metres high and ends at this sort of viewpoint in the eastern corner of the site, which would be above one of the raised grass mounds. But beneath that there is the pedestrian footway that runs along the southern part of the site. It initially goes down into a slightly lower ground level conical art feature. There'll be some more slides on that, or sections in a minute, and then it goes into a tunnel, which again would be a sort of artistic element in its own right, and then gradually the path works its way upwards to existing ground level at the eastern end of the end tennis court. And because of this change in levels, there are to be retaining walls either side of this path, and there's wildflower meadows, and I'm sure the applicants will say more about the details of this proposal in due course. So quickly to just take you through some sections. This is the conical chamber, which people could walk down into with a walkway above. Another few sections of, again, with the conical chamber, and it going above the tunnel. This it just shows the northwest and northeast quadrants of the development. There would be a maintenance area in the northwest corner, so the existing area of rubble would be removed as part of these proposals. There would also be a sort of maintenance building provided just north of the pavilion, which is there'll be irrigation tanks, I believe, in this location. This is a view from above of the pergola structure, which runs along the northern boundary, and the range of materials, including the concrete, the sort of footway slabs, sort of corten, sort of steel screening, and these would be the sort of concrete or the retaining walls, which would be finished in black, where the pathway is kind of rising up from the tunnel, and a sort of walkway above the tunnel areas some indications here as to what the tunnel could comprise, as well as typical sort of grass mounds as part of the scheme. And finally, there's some details here of the potential bench seats and the finishing for the pathways around the site. I don't have any further points. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and those set out in the supplementary matters. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you for that introduction. Mr Hawkins, if you'd like to go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I think there are three main areas to my concern which are set out in my letter of objection. First, the loss of open space. Secondly, the eyesore that will be created in the northwest corner by the maintenance area and the harm to wildlife. The officer's own report acknowledges in 710 that there will be inevitable reduction in the open feel of the site. And I would argue strongly that this is an inappropriate development, having regard to the protected nature of the site being a protected public open space. I also believe that the introduction of some of the fencing screens which are planned on the Eastern Parade side will again reduce the open feel of it. The solid black fence which was originally listed may have gone, but we'll still have folded steel hoops for the wisteria trellis. We're going to have significant number of ivy screens installed, yew hedges, all of which will close off the current open mesh fencing, which is characteristic of all the sports facilities along the Eastern Parade. I believe these concerns are shared by the landscape architect in paragraph 5.6, who has commented adversely on the impact of the development on the site. I'm concerned that the proposed maintenance area of the northwest corner, when planning permission was given for the shed in 2019, it was a condition that trees should be planted to screen this development. No reason is given in paragraph 7.48 why this planning policy should not continue to be applied to the site. I would have expected reasons to have been given in the report why this is no longer relevant, when just 2 years ago it was considered sufficiently important to impose a condition on the planning consent. I believe this area of this site will become increasingly industrial in nature, not in keeping with the conservation area and public open space. I feel strongly about the building which has been brought onto the site and dumped in this corner in the past few months without any permission, and which has created a major eyesore already. Sadly, I believe this reflects the approach to planning approval on this site, since numerous planning conditions have been ignored in the past 5 years since approval was given to the new pavilion. An example of this would be the lean-to attached to the southern elevation of the shed, and which was approved retrospectively in July 2020. It is a condition that is used solely for the storage of grounds maintenance equipment and associated ongoing maintenance of the tennis courts. There is machinery stored in this location, but also a great deal of other materials such as pallets, old light fittings, large bags of indeterminate material, which does not appear to be covered by the planning consent. I fear that all this junk will be moved to the northern side of the shed and become an even greater eyesore than it is, at least is hidden partially by the shed at present, and which makes the need for a tree screen even more necessary. I also believe there have been adverse consequences for the wildlife that live in Canoe Lake already through the introduction of jury-rigged lighting that runs from Eastern Parade to the pavilion on the western edge of the site. These lights are on every night until the early hours of the morning, very bright LED lights which run through the tree canopy and must be having a significant adverse effect on the birds that used to roost there, and also the moth and insect life which are integral to maintaining a diverse ecology. In short, I believe it is an overdevelopment of the site, reduces its openness as a public open space, and will create an industrial type development in its northwestern corner, which is not appropriate for this location. Thank you.
Okay, are you both going, as it were? So it's I think 12 minutes altogether. Is that correct, or is it 6 minutes for this deputation too?
Chair, as I understand it, one is for the objector and one is for the applicant, so it's their times are separate.
Okay, so it's 6 minutes each then?
Yes.
We're both, I'm the applicant and this is my art curator, so we were going to share the 6 minutes between us and have 3 minutes each.
Well, it's such a big and important application for that site. Please take 6 minutes each.
Okay, that'll be fine. Can I start?
Go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name's John Cook. I'm a director and co-owner of Cortex. Cortex, I'll give you a very brief background of the company. Cortex Limited, formerly Canoe Lake Leisure Limited, was founded in 2013 to safeguard the future of the grass courts at Canoe Lake. Along with managing and improving both the grass courts and the surrounding site, we've also installed 6 floodlit artificial grass courts. We've resurfaced 2 tarmac tennis courts and installed a basketball court and a netball court, the latter of which are totally free to use by all the community and are very well used. We also built Cafe Fresco, which has now established itself as one of the highest rated and reviewed cafes in Southsea. We completely rebuilt the tennis pavilion, which was, I hope you can remember, an asbestos-ridden wooden shack. It now has changing facilities, a members bar, and we host a variety of community activities which are extremely popular with the local residents. The building has won 8 awards for its Community Award and Architectural Design, including the finalist in the World Architecture Festival. The tennis club is thriving with nearly 500 tennis members. Our target was 200, and over 500 social members. So for those people who are not interested in tennis, just want to use the pavilion with the cafe and terrace and the social events, are most welcome as well. £10 a year they pay for that. The project has always been philanthropic in nature and a charity in everything but name, and now Cortex is waiting for the Charities Commission to give us charitable status, which we're expecting within a few weeks. Now more specifically about the art trail. The art trail around the grass tennis courts will enhance the tennis playing and spectating experience. I know that the landscape designer thought some of it was going to look too busy. My expertise is in tennis, and I won't allow anything to compromise the tennis. It will be a great enhancement with some seating and some distractions for the spectators to enjoy while they watch the tennis. The LTA have seen the plans and think it's great and perhaps unique within the whole of the UK. International tennis tournaments, which we've hosted in the past, can still go ahead and are expected to continue when the LTA can find sponsors. So we had ladies ranked in the top 50 in the world playing on our courts in a public park in Southsea, which is unique in the whole of the UK. They usually play in elite tennis centres, not in a public park. The art trail itself is in a secure fenced area with a permanently staffed pavilion being the only access point. Staff are on site until close of business every day. We then have a private security patrol funded by ourselves to protect the site all night, 365 nights a year. This has reduced antisocial behaviour by a significant amount, and this also has a knock-on with the rest of Canoe Lake, which I know can have its problems, as you're well aware, but what we have done is minimise those problems, all funded by ourselves. A huge number of local residents have seen our models. We have a 3D model of the art trail and plans of the art trail, and we've been overwhelmed by the support from our members, from our social members, and from the local residents. We put it in the window of the pavilion next to the very popular walkway within Canoe Lake. We have many wishing to volunteer to help the project. We've prioritised the design of the art trail so we're not compromise the outlook from our neighbours. Obviously, I think we had a total of 6 or 7 objections. Hundreds of people overlook the tennis courts in those apartments and private housing. Like the rest of our philanthropic project, we continue to provide affordability and accessibility for everyone to enjoy our unique features and facilities, as well as ensuring the environment is safe and welcoming for all visitors. Our excellent track record with providing tennis, catering and community activities enjoyed by everyone will continue with the art trail, and we will ensure our great relationship with our neighbours and local community continues. We're very pleased that the Planning Department acknowledged that the art trail adheres to all policies regarding South Sea seafront and public open space, and that there was no harm to residents, and all other matters were resolved in the conditions and changes that we've made already. In view of the maintenance area, it will have high hedging and screens, so instead of trees screening it, there'll be hedging screening it. I don't quite understand why the maintenance area is quite so contentious. It's a green wooden shed which is already there, and some gravel around it to house some machinery. Obviously, with the size of the site, we do need mowers. We do need quite a lot of garden equipment to maintain that site. These are internationally recognised grass courts, some of the best in the UK, which everybody can use, and so we do need to maintain that area. And we have some of the best grass courts in the country, used by some of the best players in the country and in the world, and used by lads from Lee Park who can pay £2 each to use the same courts as millionaire tennis players. The ecology report was very positive, and we will ensure that we adhere to all of their recommendations. The lighting along the path, which was commented on, that was actually suggested by a councillor and the public to have lighting along the path to make it safe to return home having used the facilities. I'm quite happy to take that down and not pay for the electricity, but it seems like most people think it's an advantage rather than a disadvantage to have it. There have been some timing, it's on a timer, and I think I bought a cheap Amazon timer, so if it is on all night, then that's my fault, and I will remedy that straight away. I think that's all I'm going to say on the matter. Natasha is our art curator at Cortex, and she can describe the nature of the art in more detail than I can.
I have a question before I begin. Are we able to look at the plan whilst I speak?
We'll get the plans put up.
I can then talk about it more freely.
Okay, Ezzy? Kick it up. No?
Thank you. This project aims to activate the currently...
I'm so sorry, that's it, you got it, well done.
How are we now? Oh, lovely. So this project aims to activate the currently unused marginal ground around the tennis courts by creating a landscape trail with inviting breakout areas for relaxing, socialising and viewing art sculpture. So when we look at the plan overall, you can see these different pockets of green, which are all grass areas with a path running through. Closer to the pavilion, we have a more hard surface with concrete paving, and then it kind of merges into a soft gravel path throughout the trail. The difference between the dark green and the light green is the grass and the planting areas. So you can see the different light green areas suggest places where we would place sculpture, art pieces, not limited to 3D works, but also it could be audio artwork by artists, poetry, readings, etc. The landscaping provides an opportunity to display art sculpture, but also an inviting natural environment to sit out in and enjoy the fresh air. Currently, the marginal ground is just grass, and we don't have any formalised seating for people to leisurely go out and take a drink and relax in. Key to the plan was making sure that the site was useful to both tennis players, visitors and art viewers, so we designed it so that there's a path running around the running along the south of the tennis courts, separate to the art trail, so that tennis players can access the courts and have their own experience. There'll be intermittent seating along that path, but then also art visitors and people who are just there to socialise can enter the art trail path and be in completely separate environments by hedging. Also, we're planning to excavate gradually down the south side of the site so that it will be sunken and even less distracting or visible. You wouldn't be able to see art visitors and vice versa. At Cortex, we are passionate about how sports and art and being outdoors amongst nature vastly improves our well-being, and these are the values that are guiding our philanthropy. The Art Trail will provide an outdoors arts destination not otherwise existing in the local community. It will be for members and visitors alike to enjoy. Access through the Cortex Pavilion. This is the only access point for the trail. So you can enter through the pavilion reception like tennis players do already, exit via the back door, and both tennis players and art visitors would enter the south entrance to the trail and go anti-clockwise, but they would separate at that first viewing pocket, which here is a kind of mustard yellow, which is a permanent viewing pocket for tennis players, something that we don't have currently. Would be two-tiered seating, and tennis players access through that point. Thank you for the cursor. And art visitors would continue along the concrete path, along the trail. The design of the art trail has been considered to ensure the two activities, art and tennis, do not interrupt one another. The landscape design brings opportunity to introduce further trees and planting to the site to encourage wildlife and biodiversity, as well as a wildflower section, which we can see here in the vivid green area, which is going to be absolutely beautiful when you rise up out of the tunnel experience. You will be able to view over the Corten boundary to see the wildflowers, and I would love to perforate or create openings into that Corten steel so that you can actually be eye level with hopefully the butterflies that will start cultivating in that flower section. I think it'll be a really beautiful natural experience, and that's really leading the curatorial theme for the trail, which is nature anew, which is a phrase I've termed to describe how we can connect with nature through new experience. It doesn't have to be technology or nature, it can be both, and it's about how we can enhance our understanding of nature and be one with it. Nature is something that's really important to Cortex, even in the way that the water tanks supply irrigation through rainfall to the site, and so we are looking at all ways that we can promote nature and environmentally friendly materials. Even with the concrete, we're looking at ways we can use a renewable concrete. Our landscape designer knows more about these materials, but it's really interesting as he has a passion too, so he's always introducing us to new materials that we can explore and utilise in the planning. So Nature Anew, the curatorial theme, is inspired by the site's surroundings. The art trail artworks will seek to signpost visitors to nature, creating connections between them, a reminder of our interconnection with the environment. One feature that we currently have on the plan is the conical sculpture, where you would be able to walk inside this piece, and it's sunken in the ground, so again it's not visible from Eastern Parade. You can walk inside, and the ellipse cut out of the top of the conical cone captures light, which will be reflected into the ground where you're standing, and in time, through testing, we can actually create a piece of art that reflects certain times of the calendar year and really play around with that. And it'd be quite striking, much like Richard Serra's work. So a really signpost piece on the trail. So the art trail will consist of a series of outdoor sculptures, and they'll be situated along the trail. and they'll be curated in harmony with the landscape design. We really want it to be harmonious. We want the artworks to sit well into the landscape and really be connecting with its environment, which is why we're so passionate about the planting we're using. It goes hand in hand. I'm working very closely with our landscape designer to see how that will work, conversations back and forth, so that it doesn't look like anything is out of place and it's all meant to be. So yes, very collaborative process.
And can you bring your description to a close, if you would, Natasha? Thank you.
Yes. So this dynamic programming aims to be accessible to our diverse community, with plans to connect with the local groups, charities and organisations to promote the art trail as a space for their communities to enjoy. The Cortex facilities are open to all, and we hope by diversifying our activity offering we can welcome more visitors of the South Sea community. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, for that comprehensive overview. Members, any questions? Hang on a minute, Councillor. Mr. Brooke, any problem? If you turn your mic on, you raised your hand, sir.
Yes, is it possible to ask clarification, because Mr. Cook made a statement which is not provided for in the plans. He said that the maintenance area would be hedged. The plans show no hedging on that part of the site.
I'll get the officers to reply to that, sir. Thank you for raising that point. Ezzy, you heard what Mr. Cook has said.
There's a question about the hedging around the area in the northwest corner of the site, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, the drawing at the moment, it does show hedging within the site. If you can see, where the laser pointer is. If we could show the presentation, please. Thank you. So the laser pointer shows hedging here around this part of the site. Obviously there's existing hedge along the road as well. I think this part of on the left hand side is either wall or hedge, I can't recall, but yeah.
Good. I'm glad we cleared that point up. More for the wildlife. Councillor Vernon Jackson, you had a question. You haven't got a question.
It was the same question.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Smythe, the question.
My question is about, I can see why we are looking at this in the committee, and I'm glad we are, because it's an important development of the seafront area. It's because we own the land. I'm a bit unclear as to the planning legislation and how it applies to such landscaping projects. Is it here because it's a change of use? I don't think it is, because all the surrounding areas are used in the same sort of way. Would I have to apply for planning permission if I wanted to put a small obelisk in my garden? I just don't quite understand why this is development in the way that we normally see it here in front of us, and I think it would be helpful to know.
Yes, Councillor, the development would involve elements of engineering operations, which comprise development, the formation of the tunnels, etc. There was also structures being built in terms of the overhead walkway. That's comprised development. There's no benefit here in terms of householder permitted development rights or other permitted development rights. So the combination of all those, even though the use would be appropriate within the general sort of recreational activities on the in this part of the seafront, that's why it needs permission.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Okay, in the absence of any other questions, I'm going to move the officer's report. So I'm going to propose it. Councillor Smythe.
I'd like to second it. I think this is...
Chair, sorry to interrupt, Judith. We haven't had comments.
I'm going to come to my comments now. So I'm moving it. I'm going to make a comment. Okay? All right. So I'm going to make a comment. I'm moving the proposal. That's right. It's fine. It's fine.
I'd like to second it, please.
Indeed, you've got it. Fine.
I think it's going to be great.
Okay. So thank you all for coming, Mr. Cook, and the deputation. I think it's an important application we're considering this morning for a lot of reasons. I was very pleased to be in the chair when this first happened many moons ago. I don't doubt for one moment that if Mr. Cook and the philanthropic people behind it hadn't come along, this could just as easily be a boarded up, fly-tipped fence with people chucking stuff over. It is also important to note too that the tennis programme in our city is enormous, bigger than most other places in the United Kingdom. Together with South Sea Tennis Club, what goes on here, the university, all linking together with the indoor tennis provision in the city north, and together with all the outdoor courts that have been improved enormously by the LTA over a number of years. And these things result in the new players coming through, like Emma Raducanu, who's now in the quarterfinals of the US Open at aged 18, and indeed other successes around the Olympics, and young men and women coming through. All the men seem to be holding back at the moment. It's the women taking everything forward in British sport, which is marvellous. But anyway, the point is that this incorporates art. I heard what Mr. Cook said about our landscape officer, saying that whilst we would encourage the installation of art and applaud the creative thought behind this project, which is great, we feel it would be great to benefit if this was incorporated into the wider park. We did try that, but we got turned down by the Heritage Lottery to turn the area, including Canoe Lake, into a larger national sort of park, and it was going to all change. And with a lot of this sort of stuff was envisaged back in that plan, but we didn't get the money coming through. Somewhere else got it. So I don't think the landscape architect is that critical of it. He says it seems rather busy, but it is a busy area. We've got netball going on, we've got cricket going on, we've got golf going on, a whole host of other things that might not have been there had it not been for what Mr. Cook and his friends and partners have done together with the LTA. There's a lot more I would say about it, but change is always difficult sometimes, and it's difficult for people to see the seafront evolving in the way that it is evolving. And I think that what is going on along the seafront is a great improvement to what was there before. So I'd like to thank Mr. Cook and Natasha and Mr. Hawkins for coming along and giving us a fair and balanced view of what is proposed to be there. Any other comments, members? Councillor Vernon Jackson, then Councillor Atwell, then Councillor New. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to follow you, just to say thank you to both Mr. Hawkins and Mr. Cook and the Arts Officer for coming to talk this through with us. As you say, it's always difficult when things change, and this is a very much loved area of the city, and there are always tensions between those people who live there and people who might want to visit. I would urge Mr. Cook to work as closely as possible with the residents. I know he has, to try to make sure that this blends in. And I think many of the concerns about the different proposals that have happened around that area people's concerns haven't come to fruition. People have seen the benefits that have come forward over time. So those tennis courts are immensely improved and a really excellent facility in the city. But there's been other things that have happened in the local area as well, having the nursery there as a facility for families, and I know there were considerable concerns from residents when that came forward for planning, but also the investment people have put into both South Parade Pier and into the model village, so that things have improved and the cafes as well have benefited. I would urge people to work as closely as possible with residents, but sometimes you have to kind of decide where the balance comes to. We've got an issue coming up about a pedestrian crossing. Do we listen to the people who live right next door to where the crossing might be, or to the families who might use it to be able to get across? And it's a really difficult balancing thing. But on balance, I think this is a significant additional improvement on the seafront. To have a different offer of something new and different. The seafront is an area where people come to. It's an area which attracts people to visit, and it's always been like that. That's what the seafront is. And those of us, and I live close to it, those of us who live close to the seafront need to remember that when we move there. So I'm strongly in favour of this. I think it is a really good additional facility. I'd never have thought of this, so great guns to whoever did. I think it's a very good idea. And I hope that it's possible for the tennis club to work very closely with local residents, and I'm very sure that their concerns will be able to be addressed, and that this will be a really positive thing for the local area. So I think this is a good thing to be doing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Vanger.
Chair, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Vanger. Councillor Atwell, then Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair and Councillor Smythe. Sorry for interrupting you earlier. It's a little previous. The committee always welcomes people coming along and giving deputation, so thank you, Mr Hawkins. It's important to remember that we can only think about the material planning considerations in this committee, and I know he has concerns that things might happen if and when plan permission is granted, but we can't have a crystal ball and know what might happen in the future. For me, echoing Councillor Vernon Jackson, I think this is a terrific addition to the city's cultural offer, and I think Cortex is already a terrific addition to the cultural offer, and this only enhances it. By the way, thank you for having Genie Driver down there. That was a really good exhibition recently. So I should be... you proposed at the end, did anyone interrupt you? A very important bit of this is that it's accessible for all to go and enjoy art, and I think that's very important in the city. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and maybe here's some wheelchair tennis in the near future as well. Oh, great stuff, wonderful. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. What a great application. Thank you again for the detail from the deputies. It's most welcome for being able to see your vision articulated. And I think you'll probably agree with me, Chair, this is another step towards the world-class seafront that we all aspire to across all benches. And it's hugely exciting to see. I go down to this area a lot with my dog multiple times a week, and in the summer it is glorious, and you see people playing tennis. So seeing an increased offer there, as well as inclusivity around arts and redevelopment of areas, for wider sporting uses. And as you touched on, we've got some great talent actually, not only in the city, but people coming into the city to go there, because I think it's quite a unique, not only the location, but people are drawn in to play things like tennis or volleyball, whatever, netball, right by the sea, because after that you're like, well, now I can go and enjoy the rest of the seafront, and it's incredible. And that combined with the sea defences that we've got coming down the line, I think in 10 years' time, Portsmouth is going to be the place to come on the south coast, and this application today is another cog in that wheel of making that happen. So yeah, I'm happy to support this.
Well, thank you very much. Did you want to say something to Councillor Smythe?
Thank you. I've seconded your proposal, but I just wanted to say also, I think this does offer the opportunity for, as was said in the presentation, poetry readings, small-scale drama performances, and other things in the open air, which I think will become really important to the city as a cultural centre, and will encourage people to go back and back to this venue. Sometimes we need a little bit more control than is offered by the bandstand and by some of the other features that will be built into the sea defences for those sorts of things. And I think for a sort of intimate performance, coupled with the sculpture and the art, I think this will make a major contribution, not just to the sporting life of the city, but to the artistic life of the city.
I think that's right. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, basically just echoing what everybody else has said, but I thank you for bringing this. I think it's a wonderful application that will add to the spiritual and physical growth of our city. And just to add, I think particularly in a post-COVID world, or I know we're still trying to cope with it, but this will offer something really valuable for people, because we know that sport also helps your mental health as well as helping to get you fit, and it will enable people to come out of this horrible, bewildering period. We need these kind of facilities. I would also say that where green space is concerned, I would prefer for it to have a designated use, because when green space sometimes is just, open green space, it tends to encourage littering and dog muck. So I think designated use sporting facilities is the best way forwards. I would also say that the concerns around the conservation area, what actually is more traditional and perfectly fits the credentials of a conservation area than the traditional game of tennis. Very well done, thank you.
Yeah, much obliged. I mean, nobody should underestimate the sports economy in this country. It is quite considerable. I don't know how much good rackets cost nowadays, but a lot of money, I should think. But anyway, and following on from Councillor New's very welcome remarks, the seafront is evolving and as a world-class destination. We go the investment in the D-Day Museum, South Brake Pier talked about by Councillor Vernon Jackson, this contribution, all the sports facilities along there, the beach volleyball that we put in the years back, the improvements around South Sea Tennis Club and all the new cafes selling decent sort of food. There are chips and burgers down there, fish and chips, because that is part of the seafront's offer. But it's the mix now, whereas before that's all you used to get. It is now the mix, which is making it a different place. So it's a great offer, and it always irritates isn't the right word to use, but it always makes me scratch my head when people say there's nothing to do along the seafront. I mean, yeah, sure, the clubs have gone, but certainly there's a huge amount to do. So anyway, I sense overwhelming enthusiasm for this report and the proposition. So together with all the conditions attached with protect wildlife, see increased greenery and various other things, and protect the architecture of the area, all those in favour please show. So that is unanimous, and you have your planning application. Thank you all very much for coming along today. Sorry?
Thank you for your time and your comments.
Thank you for all your hard work. Now we move on to 25 Driftwood Gardens. Who's doing this one, gents? Thank you. Go ahead, Neil.
I could have the presentation up, please.
Sorry.
Thank you. So yes, this is application relates to 25 Driftwood Gardens. This is for the construction of a part single, part two-storey side extension to include balcony, roof alterations to include front dormer window, and this is an amended description relating to amended plans which are submitted during the course of the determination of the application. Members' attention is drawn to the supplementary matters. Paragraph 1.7, the dimensions should read 7.95 metres in height for the extension rather than, I think it said millimetres. The officer recommendation is unchanged. There are deputations from Valerie Wood, I believe from the applicant as well, Mr Freemantle and Councillor Stubbs. So the application site is located, it's a two-storey detached house at the end of Driftwood Gardens, eastern end of Driftwood Gardens, close to Henderson Road. The property has an existing single-storey side extension and conservatory and a detached garage. Some site photographs here which show the rear elevation to Eastney Esplanade. You can see 25 Driftwood Gardens here behind the wall and planting, and to behind the camera really is the seafront, and number 1 Driftwood Gardens is there on the right hand side. These are views along Eastney Esplanade looking east, showing a variety of house types. The development was built in sort of late 70s, early 80s. This view shows the application property, some within Driftwood Gardens, looking east, so that's the property there that I'm highlighting. There is also a detached garage which forms part of the curtilage of the property. The site plan, the block plan, shows, this is the application site, the detached property here with its double garage. Number 1, Driftwood Gardens, located immediately to the northeast, and number 2. The development proposed would, effectively the property at the moment has bedrooms on the ground floor. The development would facilitate the provision of, getting the bedrooms upstairs. At ground floor level, there would be a new utility room entrance to the property. And at first floor, you can see here that the bedrooms are now moved to first floor level. There would be 5 bedrooms in total. The existing extension would be demolished, and there would be a first floor bedroom number 2 with a balcony which would be south facing. In addition, in the roof there would be additional loft storage provided as part of this planning application. I'll alert members to a concurrent application which is for a further development in the roof for this application. I'll show you the slide at the end, but it is for a additional dormer window on the south slope facing the foreshore, which would facilitate the provision of a master bedroom and ensuite in the roof. But that is being pursued under an application for a certificate of lawfulness for proposed development. As things stand, officers are of the view that potentially would be permitted development, so there would be an additional bedroom in the roof. But for the purposes of this application, which needs permission, this is the plans that you are considering today. These are the existing and proposed front elevations, which are to the north. So the existing elevation shows the existing single-storey side extension. The proposed shows the 2-storey side extension, obscure glazed windows facing first floor level. Now proposed, that's following concerns raised by the occupied number 1 Driftwood Gardens. And at the front there is also to be a dormer window which would serve a stairwell. This shows existing and proposed side elevations. This is the east side of the building, so the existing extension shown here. It does have an existing terrace embedded within the roof, which is also south facing. This would now be replaced with the 2-storey elevation. Amended plans actually have dropped the ridge line of this very marginally from that shown in this particular image. There is a side rendered wall at the edge of the proposed balcony, which would fully enclose it to ensure views are not towards the neighbouring property but are south facing only. There are some images taken from the garden of number 1, Driftwood Gardens, which shows the existing flank of the application property and the existing single-storey extension. This plan shows the south-facing elevation, so you would have here the balcony with the screen wall at its eastern edge. The ridge line has been dropped to make sure that the extension is subservient to the original host dwelling. And finally, these elevations are from the western end as you would come in. Effectively, it just shows the edge of the proposed dormer and the elevation of the existing garage. It is proposed as part of permitted development that I think I do have these plans here. This is the permitted development application or certificate of lawfulness that is being sought for an additional dormer window in the south-facing roof, as well as conversion of the existing detached garage to a home office, which is addressed in the report, and to which there are no existing conditional planning controls preventing that from happening. But that is a separate application and falls outside the remit of this application. Thank you.
Okay, and since you're in full flow, do you want to do Councillor Stubbs' deputation that we've got here in front of us?
Yes, Chair. I welcome the changes the application has made to the scheme. The impact of the original proposal on neighbouring properties was excessive, and we are now much closer to a solution. In addition to the comments on the plans made by a previous speaker, I would like to say a little more about the north-facing window within the extension. This would have an invasive impact on the properties at numbers 1 and 2, and that is the reason why the officer's recommendation includes an obscure glass condition. These are never imposed lightly, and this is recognition that the properties are close by and the effect severe. In other locations, the Council has gone further and imposed tighter restrictions to protect privacy. Accumulating detail on individual schemes is difficult because few householder schemes make it to the Planning Committee, and the new build developments that do come here are designed in such a way as to provide adequate separation spaces between properties. One relevant scheme that did come before this committee was the conversion of the Brewery House, Hambrook Street, to 17 flats. One of the conditions limits some of the windows to be fixed below 1.7 metres above floor level. In other words, the uppermost part of the window that most people could not see through would be allowed to open. That building is located such that it only views other properties from the street. There are no rear gardens. It is a generally accepted, established principle that rear elevations and rear gardens receive a greater degree of protection than those at the front. The properties in Driftwood Gardens should benefit from a similar consideration. Another relevant scheme was replacement of redundant buildings, a 46 to 50 new road with 11 flats. That was considered by this committee last July, and the conditions on the windows included a similar non-opening condition, except on that part of the window over 1.7 metres above the floor line, and it included a condition requiring Pilkington glass level 4 obscuration, which is a more demanding restriction than imposed here. In short, this committee has options, it has established precedents, and it has a duty to protect people in neighbouring properties whilst facilitating development. I urge you to consider this issue very carefully.
We'll go to Mrs Wood now, if we may. Over to you, Mrs Wood.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee, for hearing my deputation today. My name is Mrs Wood. I live in 1 Driftwood Gardens, the neighbouring property most significantly impacted by this application. I do not believe that the report fairly assesses the impact of the plans on the amenity of neighbouring residents. The distance between our two properties is 12 metres, 2 metres closer than mentioned in section 510 of the report, which could be misleading to the Planning Committee in terms of the overbearing nature of the proposed plans. In my view, the smaller than reported separation distance and siting relative to my property would materially harm my living conditions with considerations to both outlook and light. The report notes some vegetation along the garden boundary as offering some visual screening. My garden has been growing over 40 years and does offer some screening between our properties in their current format. However, it would not be possible for this vegetation to offer any screening to the size of this proposed first floor extension, and so this actually offers no visual screening in regards to this application. Therefore, the proposed side extension is considered to result in a significant impact in terms of sense of enclosure and loss of outlook. My objection letters have raised concern about the loss of privacy and potential for noise disturbance from the proposed north-facing window, and these concerns remain. There is no requirement for this window for either light or ventilation. which are already well served by the proposed large south-facing opening balcony doors and the open plan layout between the ground and first floors. At a very minimum, more stringent planning conditions should be imposed by the Planning Committee to include increasing the obscurity of glazing to Pilkington Glass Level 5 and insisting on a completely fixed non-opening window and to be retained thereafter. I would strongly urge the Planning Committee to consider rejecting the north-facing window element of the proposals. Complete removal of this window would prevent loss of privacy and increased noise disturbance, which would otherwise be unfairly and unacceptably forced upon me. I have concerns regarding inaccuracies in 4 out of the 10 drawings proposed for approval in accordance with page 36 of today's Planning Committee report. With regards to the garage, the report indicates in section 513 there are no proposed changes to the garage as part of this planning application, and this is being dealt with separately under a lawful development certificate application. That therefore renders the proposed side, rear and garage elevations plan drawing inaccurate and misleading, as this does include proposed changes to the side elevation of the garage with additional windows proposed. The existing garage window is not 4-paned, and extending this window closer to my property increases the potential for noise disturbance. This side view of the proposed garage is also not shown in section 1.5 of the report. I believe it is therefore misleading for the Planning Committee to be informed that no changes to the garage are being proposed to be dealt with in this application, when in fact the drawings for approval today include such changes. The proposed ground floor plan contains an error because it shows the boundary of the property in red, but this is not reflective of the true boundary of the property in accordance with reality and the block and location plan. The issue is that there is no space between the rear of the existing garage wall and the garden of my property. The boundary is the rear of the garage wall. This renders the proposed ground floor drawing inaccurate and provides an illusion that there is wider than possible terracing and the proposed extension is sited further from my property boundary than the reality would be. There is an area requiring further clarity marked AA on 3 plan drawings, namely the proposed ground floor, first and second floor and roof plans. In the original planning application, there was an additional plan drawing for the proposed section AA. This is not included within the final plan drawings proposed for approval, and neither is an updated version of this. It is my belief that section AA should either be omitted from these 3 plan drawings, rendering them all inaccurate, or a revised proposed section plan drawing is required for transparency and clarity of details and intentions before a decision can be made upon the application. To summarise and conclude in 3 points. 1. I recommend that planning permission is fully refused today on the basis of misleading, inaccurate plans. This application should at a minimum be deferred to a future planning committee meeting with revised, accurate plans submitted for review by all interested parties ahead of that meeting. This would ensure that the planning committee are voting on wholly accurate reports and drawings. 2. I invite the planning committee to undertake a site visit to my property and see for yourselves the accuracy of my objections and deputations. This is not just a case of not in my backyard. This is a case of ensuring that anything that is given permission does not cause me unfair or undue loss of privacy, outlook or light, or increased noise disturbance, all of which I believe this does. 3. If proceeding today, then 2 additional planning conditions should be imposed to protect my privacy: removal of the north-facing window and rejection of the garage side elevation window extension. Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee, for hearing my deputation. I will now observe your voting on this application and hope that you will take my points raised today into careful consideration as you proceed.
Yes, thank you. Before we come to Mr. Fremantle, just some clarification, please, officer. Are the plans correct and accurate or not?
Thank you, Chair. Officers, I've not identified any inaccuracies with the plans. The plans that have been presented today and as referenced in the report show accurately existing and proposed layouts. The section would be through the dormer, the proposed dormer on the north side. I don't have that in the presentation, but no errors have been identified through consultation with the officer concerned. So I think there is confusion clearly in respect of the concurrent application for lawful development certificate in respect of permitted development rights, which does relate to the detached garage, but that doesn't form part of this planning application.
And secondly, I wouldn't normally do this, but I don't want sort of a tennis match between the applicant and the objector. Condition 4, the first floor window of the north elevation shall be glazed with obscure Pilkington level 3, etc., and shall be non-opening other than tilt vent and retained thereafter. Now, is that the same window that Councillor Stubbs has raised with us and that Mrs. Woods is talking about?
Yes, I believe it is, Chair. This was the closest north-facing window to the deputy.
Okay. Ms. Fremantle, go ahead.
So, firstly, I'd like to thank the committee for hearing our representations today. This is our first experience of a planning application. Has been a steep learning curve so far. So I will try to limit my comments today to the relevant facts and planning law. I'm of course not an expert in this area. I'm actually hoping to respectfully ask the planning committee to support the individual who I do consider to be the expert in this case, the planning officer, who has been able to assess this application objectively. So I'd like to first refute the allegations made against us, the motive of our planning application. I'd like to expressly state that it is our intention with this planning application is to make improvements to our home and our growing family. Our home has not been renovated in approximately 40 years and is in much need of some internal and external improvements. To give just one example, the upside-down nature of our home means that our 2-year-old son has to frequently go downstairs to play in the garden from the living space upstairs where his toys are located. This, is amongst other things, means the home is not fit for purpose for our family. In the design submitted, we have tried to utilise the existing extension and incorporate more into the living space. We do not intend to make our family home with 2 young children into a HMO, and there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that this is our situation. So a similar example of the extension we're seeking today can be seen at number 10 Driftwood Gardens, who have completed a comparable 2-storey extension to the side of the property. In that example, the roof line is actually uniform across the property, which I feel looks visually appealing. In spite of this precedent, we have made further considerations, reducing the roof height in order for it to appear slightly subservient to the main roof. I mentioned other developments only in reference our own application and a
Can I just stop you there, Mr. Fremantle? Mrs. Wood, would you be kind enough just to lean forward and press the button, because it affects the volume that Mr. Fremantle is able to talk to us at. Thank you very much indeed.
Would you like me to repeat
I think you were speaking loudly enough for people to hear.
Okay, thank you. So I mentioned other developments only in reference our own application and a precedent from 2009, Guildford v Secretary of State, in which High Court stated, in the exercise of planning judgment, a relevant consideration may be the local authority's own approach to similar applications in the locality. Public law principles demand consistency in the application of policies by public bodies, such as local planning authorities, and derives from general principles of fairness in the treatment of citizens. I'm keen not to be drawn into a negative exchange with my neighbour, as I feel it doesn't serve a purpose for the community or the determination of a planning application. I hope that if you are able to view the property on Google Maps or visit the site, it will become clear to the committee that the alleged impact of what we are proposing to neighbour at number 1 has been grossly exaggerated. I'd like to draw the committee's attention to a number of facts which are relevant to this application, which I believe support the planning officer's recommendation to approve the application today. So these are as follows. So all of the properties in Driftwood Gardens were built as part of a housing estate of 25 detached houses. In this setting, it is clearly reasonable and likely that other individuals may seek to make improvements and changes to their family homes. By nature of living in a densely populated urban environment, all of the properties in Driftwood Gardens by design have a degree of mutual overlooking which cannot be avoided. That term was recently used in a planning application for 10 Driftwood Gardens by the planning officer. Our plans do not overlook any further than what is already visible into any neighbouring property. The property will remain a single detached family home, clearly in keeping with the area. There is a history of approving similar planning applications in the locality of Driftwood Gardens. Many of the properties in Driftwood Gardens have undertaken extensions and home improvements. Most, if not all, of the properties located on the south of the estate have installed rear-facing balconies with an outlook to the sea. Our proposed balcony is certainly one of the smallest and sits on our eastern side, which is the side which we do not have an adjacent neighbour and where there would be clearly least impact on neighbouring properties. As stated in the officer's report, my neighbour's property is approximately 14 metres or 45 feet away from my home, and given the balcony is on the rear of my property, that distance would likely be further. Issues raised about the noise and light can therefore not be considered reasonable. In regards to the visual amenity of the development, we enlisted the help of a professional, experienced and local architect to help support the design, ensuring it was of excellent quality and in line with the Portsmouth PCS 23, well designed and respecting the character of the city. The design has in mind the Portsmouth Plan PSC 9, revitalise the seafront whilst maintaining the character. The design is simple and has been chosen with coastal links in mind. The simple white render on the external appearance is sure to stand the test of time and not date like some trends could do, and will be a warm welcome change to the dated 70s faded green tile which we currently have. The property is much in need of regeneration, and we strongly believe our development will help contribute to the main aim set out in the Portsmouth plans to make Portsmouth a desirable place to live, which epitomises contemporary waterfront living. Our investment and improvements will contribute to making this part of the seafront vibrant and attractive. Given the property is to remain a detached single-family home with minimal additional space added in our design and with comparable extensions throughout the properties in Driftwood Gardens, it is clearly reasonable to say it is of appropriate scale and density. As I stated at the outset, the planning officer is in my view the expert in this case, and this is why I am asking the committee to support her recommendation. From the report, the planning officer clearly states the proposed extension is acceptable in terms of its design in relation to the host dwelling and surrounding area, and would not have a significant impact on the amenities of neighbouring residents in terms of loss of outlook, light or privacy. The proposal therefore accords with the relevant policies in the Portsmouth Plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. The President in Planning also appears to support this recommendation. In the Bunt House Wind Farm inquiry, Inspector Jill Kinnaby confirmed that no individual has the right to a particular view, and changing the outlook from a property is not sufficient. She states that when assessing the effect on visual outlook, it is helpful to pose the question, would the proposal affect the outlook of these residents to such an extent, i.e. be so unpleasant, overwhelming and oppressive that this would become an unattractive place to live? This was endorsed by the Secretary of State, who confirmed the planning system controls development in the public interest and not in the private interest. The preservation of open views is a private interest, which the planning regime is not intended to protect. It is clear in this case that our development could not reasonably consider to render our neighbour's property so unattractive a place to live that permission should be refused. As previously mentioned, we are seeking to reinvest and regenerate a much-loved family home in order to make it work for our growing family for the many years to come. I would ask the committee to support the planning officer's recommendation in this case and approve the application with the conditions outlined. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. I've got a quick question then. One of the issues at hand is about this balcony, and I see at 1.6 it says there's addition of a privacy screen, 2 metres rendered wall. This is what overlooks Mrs. Wood's rear garden in the southern corner?
That's correct, Chair.
And is there any other way apart from through their tilted Pilkington 3 obscure glass, they could possibly look into her garden?
No.
Members Members, any questions? Councillor Burney-Jackson.
Sorry, I've got 4 questions, if that's all right. First one is, my understanding is that what we try to avoid is piecemeal development, so that if we've got a development, there is a single planning application that covers all of this. Looking at what was shown on screen, there is also potential development coming in with through permitted development rights, which would adding 3 additional windows or French windows and balcony on the 2nd floor. Why is that not, and also the development, the change of use of the garage, if we're trying to get overall planning thing, why is part of a development here as a planning application, but another bit of the development in the same building coming through as permitted development? Because it seems to me there is an issue for discussion about the scale and massing of the entire structure. I've got 3 more questions after that.
Yes, to some extent, this is a kind of a choice for the applicant. I mean, if they wanted to apply for everything, the combined proposals, they could, but they have applied for those elements which go beyond what is householder permitted development, and I guess that they're using their right to apply for a certificate of lawfulness for the additional development in the roof, which hasn't been determined yet, but the indications are that it would probably comply with the permitted development order. So yes, the point is noted, but we as officers determine the application before us. But it is the applicant's right to have made the decision that they've taken.
Okay, the other question I've got is, what's the difference in terms of Pilkington level 3, which is in the recommendation, and Pilkington level 5, which was in Councillor Luke Stubbs's deputation? What's the difference in obscurality? I don't know if that's the correct word.
I'm not an expert on Pilkington obscuring, but clearly it would be more obscure. But I think there is a possibility, if members are concerned, to require that there is obscure glazing to the levels suggested in the current officer report to make sure it's fixed to 1.7 metres high, which is another way of dealing with it, rather than the current recommended approach.
And thanks for getting to the last bit of my questioning. The condition in the report talks about a vent tilt. I'm not sure what that is and how that is. Is it the same or is it different to, again, what Councillor Luke Stubbs said in his deputation about having limits so that it can only be opened at 1.6 metres above floor level?
Yeah, I just want to double check with the officer whether or not this window is openable, but if I could bring up the presentation, please, we could show the drawings. Thank you. So this shows obscure glass, with a top tilt vent only.
But is that tilt vent at the bottom or at the top or at the side?
These are normally at the top. I will just, if I may, check with the planning officer, the case officer.
If I might help, Councillor, it will tilt inwards, and the reason it's to tilt inwards is to allow for ventilation, but it helps to obscure the sight line. The alternative could be that the windows are non-opening 1.7 meters to the finished floor level internally of that bedroom, which would require them to amend the configuration of the window facing north. So all the bit of the windows facing north, that is 1.7, will be fixed shut and obscured glazed, and anything above that and which normally what would normally happen would be clear glazing, maybe to allow for ventilation and to allow for sunlight. Otherwise, 1.7 means that someone will need to stand on a stool internally to be able to look out. Thank you.
Okay, and my last question is if there's a recommendation for obscured glass on that window there on the first floor, there is a window on the second floor, so higher, therefore be able to see in, but I didn't see a recommendation in terms of that being obscured. Is that because it's in a stairwell and therefore nobody can see out of it anyway?
That's correct, Councillor.
Okay, fine.
And it's further away from the property.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions, members? Right. Councillor Hooper.
Yes, just as we're talking about windows, I thought I'd pop in now because this is also an issue for me. Please excuse my naivety, I don't know much about these non-opening windows, but it makes me very, very uneasy from a fire safety point of view. So could you just perhaps flesh out some of the building regs around this and also explain how the fire risk is negated with these non-opening windows, just in case somebody was trapped in that part of the house and needed to get out?
Thank you, Councillor. Ultimately, I'm a planning officer, not a building control officer, but they would need building regs for these works, and they would have to comply with that legislation. From a planning perspective, yes, this is a whole window, tilting window for venting, unless members opt to pursue the alternative approach of having having it fixed, obscured to 1.7 metres. But Eze's got some further info.
Thank you, Nick. Can you just pull up the floor plan for the first floor? Yes, all right. Thank you very much. Councillor, if I might say, there's the balcony which has the French doors there, which would allow for fire escape for that room, would that to be required? All right, thank you.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody on questions? Comments then. So I'll start off. My own house, I look straight across into next door's hallway, and I put a sort of arty sort of Art Deco piece in there to stop, them and us sort of clashing. I can actually see into their bedroom if they leave the door open. I don't look. And of course, I know Councillor Vernon Jackson mentioned in the last meeting how, he overlooks the back of other people's properties. And this is an application where this is plans where the officers and the applicant and the objector, I think, have worked together in order to mitigate any possible overlooking towards next door's house. You've only got to look at the bird's eye plan to see that with a fixed tilting inwards window with obscure glazing in it, there's no way they could look up at Mrs. Wood's home. And I think that they've done everything they can. They've agreed to do the 2-metre high panel to stop looking over into next door's garden. So I don't see what much more can be done. So I'm going to move the report with all the conditions attached, and if somebody wants to add another condition which ups the ante on the glass, happy to incorporate that, Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Chairman, I don't see there is a sustainable way in which this is refusable. I am very worried by the piecemeal development because adding a very large extension in the roof as well, where it doesn't look towards other houses, is a big development. But I think what I would suggest is, having listened to deputations, is we look in terms of the conditions on page 56, that instead of Pilkington 3 we go as suggested for Pilkington 5 and 5.
It says 4 in Councillor Stubbs' report.
So it said 5 in Mrs. Woods' deputation. And I'm not sure.
Is there such a thing as level 5, or is it?
Yes.
Okay, 5, fine.
So, and I don't think we should split the difference at 4.5. because that probably doesn't exist. But also, if that window is able to tilt from the bottom inwards, it means that sound can escape right from the very bottom of it. And I think a better solution is something where it is fixed up to the level of 1.7 metres and is able to then tilt in from that level in, so that there is no looking and no escape of noise in. I don't think it's justifiable to say that it should be permanently closed. I just think you need through draft through. But I think, I don't know if anybody will second my suggestion, but I think it is not unreasonable to say that it should be up to the level of 1.7 metres, which we've done in other properties in the city. It should be fixed and only able to tilt from that level up.
So what will we end up then? We'll end up with a square bit of fixed glass and an inward leaning opening.
Tilt at the top.
Okay? That's all right.
I don't know if I got a second.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll second it. They're happy with that. As long as everyone's happy, that's the main thing. Right, we got that then, have we? Any other comments?
Chair, I thought you proposed the...
I have proposed it and I've incorporated...
You're going to incorporate?
Yeah, indeed.
Lovely, thank you.
All right.
Are you seconding that then, John?
Yeah. And it seems as though everybody's happy on that. Okay. Members, can we, if there's no more comments, can we move to the vote, if that's all right? Okay, all those in favour of the application, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you everybody for coming today. And you've got your planning permission.
Chair, I'm conscious that the next application there are no deputies, but for the one after there is somebody wanting to come and talk to us. I wonder if we could vary the order of business out of courtesy to the person who sat through the rest of the meeting.
That's Councillor Daniel Weems.
Well, we should
Well, you see, by keeping him here sat here, he's learning all the time. He learns fast.
Yeah, it's a very good experience. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. He's happy to stay, I take it. Let's hear this. But thank you, Councillor Vernon Jackson. I think we'll stick with the running order because they've got it on their machines, and if we move it mucks their machines up, and they, like me, get befuddled.
Chair, we've got two more applications. I wonder if we might have a 3-minute comfort break.
Yeah, sure, of course you can. No problem, if that's what members want to do. Okay.
I've never smoked in my life, Councillor.
I gave up when I left school.
So let's be back at 2:45 sharp, okay?
How are you, all right?
Members, we can all still be heard, by the way.
Sorry, Rob. I do have a natural problem.
It's too hot to be dressed up.
All right. Sorry? Oh, of course you can. I've got some photos for you, actually. I've got a video for you. Let me just send this. I'm just slagging off Matt Chapman. Horrible racing commentator. He moved over from Sky and they're now going on ITV. He's the kind of bloke, really, he sort of shouts at people. He doesn't let them answer the question before he moves on to his videos. It's like he works on a second-hand car. He's got the slick back hair. See, there's always been some weirdos associated with horse racing, but they're sort of fitted. Like Big Mac, he's sort of fitted.
When I was mayor of Newbury,
Oh, you've told me that before.
we had free tickets to every horse racing event.
Johnny gift.
And the nice thing was, you get to the restaurant at the end of it, and you might well have the one that didn't do so well at 3:30.
Are you a punter?
No.
I've got a horse now. I've got a Sharon horse. He's up in Newmarket. Yes.
So, gentlemen, how are we?
Yeah,
Yeah, you might stop.
I don't have to wait around tonight till he finishes and he always does the other first and that's on the way home.
No, the...
No, the camera will pan down to the old bag. My sister itches it. But my also the equipment was going very well. So this is we get him up to a bit of
Yes, she said.
I've never read politics and anything like this. I find it really irritating. I find it really irritating people. Oh, I know. So this guy, he massaged here, and he's had the massage for 2 years. So we did really well to get to that point.
I didn't get to see half.
No. They've done well, so here we feel comfortable. I'm going to show you some Oh, it is. And that is really incredibly difficult for us. It puts a lot of pressure on us. Because if you think about it, you're giving contradictory instructions.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, collect, come back to me, but hang on, I want this energy. So, yeah, it's really weird. My instructor, who trained at Cabin Noir in France, she said, what do you want us to do with the massage and here? She said, ride it upwards. Ride it upwards. Because not as I mean jerk the horse in the house, but almost elevate your energy up. Because that's what you need. You're saying wool, and then you're saying, but come on, I want you on the spot and I want energy. So, oh, it does. It does. So, yes, come up. When you come up, let me know. We'll go for lunch. There's lovely pubs around here.
He is so far behind.
You shouldn't have said that.
Shut up, I'm inviting you for lunch.
You should have said that in earshot.
He's coming to see my horse, that's allowed. What is annoyed with?
Half an hour, he's so far behind in doing stuff. But,
The headmaster's told you off.
and he's sloping off.
With weird women in the countryside.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure you should describe his mother as a weird woman. But he's sloping off with your mum today, aren't you?
Communities, etc.
I think it might be, I don't know.
If you want perfection, you've got to work at it.
That's fascinating still, that's it. I'm just trying to imagine.
What did you do? What did you do?
Oh, yeah, something, I was out, so just a bit of jumping.
It is. It's what I do.
I was going to say I didn't know
Because when you do so, some of the videos.
I wish. Not this time of day, Gerald. Sorry?
Okay, Anna? Okay, members, we're back on, so we're going to carry on with the Planning Committee today. We're now considering item number 5 in the reports package, which is 162B Copner Road, relocation of a front door and replace with a window. Who is doing this one, gents?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Over to you then.
I could have the presentation up, please. This application is before committee because the applicant's partner is a Portsmouth City Council employee. It relates to 162B Copner Road, and there are no deputations, and there is nothing in the supplementary matters.
All right, thank you. I'm aware that Councillor Stagg knows the property. Might want to say a little bit or not. Councillor Stagg?
I'll just finish presenting. Yep.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had.
Not yet. No.
Well, it's a short report. I was trying to make it even shorter. Right, carry on.
Well, it is a very modest development. Aerial view of the property here, located on the corner of Copner Road and Seafield Road. The application relates to a small flat, which you see with the laser pointer here, is roughly in this location here. Effectively, it is simply a replacement of a door, an entrance door, which is currently inside a courtyard, through these metal gates, which is also with an associated, there's a sewing machine business to the right-hand side there. They want to move the door effectively to go on the Seafield Road frontage, as shown in this plan. So at the moment you've got a window, you're putting in a door to match that existing for the adjoining flat, and where the original door is, that will just be made into a window. So because it's a flat, there's no permitted development rights. It's only at committee because of the relationship to the council's employee. So that is it.
Thanks. So what Councillor Weems has learnt today is that these sorts of applications involving council members and their staff have to come to the planning committee. Any comments, any questions? Councillor Smythe.
I wanted to move that we approve this.
Councillor Stagg.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, I see this virtually every day, particularly during COVID, because of the sewing machine place. You can't have people gathering there if they're taking the sewing machines in for repair. So for the people living in the flat, it must be difficult to get in and out. So it must be much easier if their main door is out on Seafield Road.
It's nice to have some local knowledge. So all those in favour of the application, please show. Thank you very much. That's approved. So we go now to Councillor Weems. We've been waiting for this. 38 St Chad's Avenue. Who's doing this one, gentlemen? So this is a change of use from dwelling house class C3 to purposes falling within class C3 or class C4 HMO, and Councillor Weems has been busy making representations on these sorts of applications over the last, well, since he's been elected actually. So anyway, nice to see you here today. Who's doing the introduction? Thanks, off we go then.
Thank you, Chair. I'll refer members to the supplementary matters. For item 6, the header section of the main report document on page 41 has got the wrong prefix year. Should read 21 rather than 20 on the report. Under paragraph 5.27, there's some erroneous text, and the first sentence should read, whilst it's acknowledged there are ongoing issues around nitrification of the solent due to increased levels of runoff from residential development, the property would be used for flexible C3, C4 use, and then the wording carries on as per the main report. The officer recommendation is unchanged. So 38 St Chad's Avenue. This is a mid-terrace, Victorian terrace property, shown outlined in red on this plan. It's currently a 3-bedroom C3 dwelling house. It did have an original rear projection which provided space for a kitchen, similar to most of the other properties along this part of Chads Avenue. And the application is to amend this so it becomes a 5-bedroom HMO under Class C4, to have an interchangeable permission between C3 and C4. So at the ground level, you've got 2 bedrooms with en-suites, an extended kitchen. I'll tell you about the extensions in a minute. On the next floor up, you've got 2 more bedrooms, each with en-suites, and then a larger bedroom, which would be in the roof slope, also with an en-suite. The property these development works have already been undertaken. The case officer had been on site and has measured these and confirmed that they have been built under permitted development rights. So that includes the roof dormer, shown here. There was a planning application put in for prior approval for part of the ground floor extensions. If I go to the photograph, this element on the left-hand side was subject to a prior approval application which was granted. But this element here, the deeper part of the extension, that is 3 metres deep beyond the original rear projection of the property. So that was permitted development, and the case officer has been on site, measured up, and they've been confirmed as permitted development. So with these developments in place, this forms the basis of the proposed change of use to allow HMO use as part of this submission, and there's an additional photograph there of the extension. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Councillor Weems, over to you then.
Thank you, Chair. I'm basically just going to read my deputation according to what residents have sent me. So a number of residents have raised their objections in respect of the above planning application at St Chad's Avenue. Residents have contacted me as well as ward colleagues with concerns about the additional pressure that will be placed upon parking in this road as a consequence of this development. I understand that there are a significant number of residents have objected to the proposal as well as concerns raised by the Portsmouth North MP. I very much appreciate that there is a need for flexible living and development within the city, and I would always argue for development that offers good quality, affordable living, not only for families but mixed households. However, this needs to be balanced and considered in context with significant pressures on parking being experienced by residents in the ward and the city in general. I'm aware that Highways have been invited to comment and have done so, and I also understand that from the report produced by Highways, they do not consider a need for a full traffic impact assessment, primarily because of the view that parking could be accommodated either through off-road parking associated with the development or via on-street parking. The local plan for the city currently allocates 2 parking spaces to developments of this type. However, I would suggest that as this is unlikely to be sufficient. I have lived at HMOs, and each time there have been more than 3 cars, with some cases being even higher. I'm not against HMOs if they are situated in areas of need, but I do not see this need in St Chad's Avenue. Residents' concerns are well founded in respect of parking as well as waste and other such issues such as antisocial behaviour, and they do need to be considered as presently there have been an explosion in the ward due to the size of the properties on offer. Many landlords are seeing this as an area as a cheap way to make money at the expense of families and elderly residents. I hope that the Planning Committee listens to these concerns.
Indeed, I can assure you we do. Members, any questions? Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Chair, I understand there's another deputation which is written, which for the record, probably needs to be read out.
Yeah, could you read it out? Thank you for that, Gerald.
Chair. This is a deputation from the applicant, Mr Van der Burg. When we first investigated and researched the need for co-living and HMO properties, it became clear there is a real need for this type of accommodation across many parts of the south, including the north end area of the city of Portsmouth. There is evidence to show many people no longer want to rent individual studios or one-bed flats for the reasons of both cost and the social aspect of living. The type of accommodation proposed is fully inclusive of all costs, all bills, council tax, high-speed broadband, etc. included, so the tenants have a fixed cost each month, which allows easier budgeting for them, as well as in many cases more disposable income. All rooms have ensuite shower. All bath facilities are well equipped and furnished and decorated to high standards, so the tenants are comfortable spending time in their own rooms or equally socialising with their co-tenants in the ground floor communal spaces, which are also well equipped and furnished to provide kitchen, dining and seating zones, all designed to encourage and promote a social living environment for the tenants. All communal areas and individual bedrooms are of a good size and in excess of minimum standards, some by as much as 50%, as required by the October 2019 HMO supplementary planning document. In response to the multiple objections received from residents not wanting houses of multiple occupancy in their neighbourhoods, the 10% HMO density rule has been put in place by Portsmouth City Council to ensure mixed and balanced communities exist. The HMO density within this location is well within the 10% limit. We do understand local residents' concerns with HMOs, and having spoken to many of them, it is clear that without exception they believe they are going to be living next to what they perceive as being a badly managed, very untidy property with lots of mainly young, unruly residents causing trouble with loud parties most nights of the week. Who would not be concerned? Another obvious concern is that of increased parking the property will generate. We actively seek out tenants when vetting who do not drive and ensure any properties are within no more than a 5-minute walk to the main bus or other public transport routes. We're also looking at ways to incentivise tenants by providing subsidised public transport to encourage the use of public transport to alleviate parking issues and to also embrace the Council's Green City initiative. The fact of the matter is this type of accommodation, although it still clearly exists, is no longer being provided from new. The majority of professional landlords realise that people now expect good quality, comfortable, affordable and properly managed places to live and are trying to provide this in a professional manner. We set out to be one of those landlords and are determined to be so. We invest a great deal of money into the renovation of the property and carry out works above and beyond what is required by planning or building regulations. All party walls are soundproofed, for example, following comments and concerns from neighbours, to provide as minimum disruption to the neighbouring residents as possible, which of course does work both ways. The property will be managed by a professional established agent and we remain hands-on, being contactable and accessible at all times. Disturbances will not be accepted or tolerated. Any complaints will be dealt with quickly, professionally and efficiently. It is of course in our interest to ensure the property has respectful tenants. In conclusion, we feel this committee should be encouraging high-quality conversions that many landlords are now trying to provide. These type of conversions will only encourage improved and greater standards of other HMO and co-living properties in the area, which are quite clearly needed. We would respectfully urge you to agree with the planning officer who has recommended the application for approval. We thank you for listening.
Okay, so I have a question. It's about the communal living space.
Chair, we've got one more deputation.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Carry on.
That's okay. My name's Rebecca Sutcliffe. I'm the owner of number 40 St Chad's Avenue, the neighbouring property to the one we're discussing. I'm here to represent myself and my partner and our views on living next door to this HMO, and also on behalf of the residents of St Chad's Avenue and Hewitt Road. Firstly, I'd like to make you all aware of what it's been like living next to this property for the last 8 months. I work long shifts. I'm a midwife working in the NHS. I can't begin to tell you how awful the noise and the mess has been from this renovation. I work mainly nights. Trying to sleep during the day with this noise has been awful. There's also been a problem with mess on the street in my front and back garden from the constant dust and dirt. There's also been an invasion of privacy from builders in my garden repairing damage to my property, and also whilst they were building the extension on the back. I've had builders and other workmen banging on my door when I'm trying to sleep to ask me to move my car, which is parked outside my own house, to allow for their own trucks and skips, etc. There's also been trucks left in the middle of the road causing havoc to the other vehicles, which has been totally unacceptable. Moving on to the extension that has been built. We bought this house 2.5 years ago, first home that we've owned, specifically wanting a south-facing garden with lots of sunlight, which we had. Has now been majorly affected with the enormous extension that has been built. It's blocked this afternoon sun into the garden and significantly reduced the sunlight into my kitchen. I now have to look out my kitchen window at the ugly red brick building that was just shown alongside the shoddy repair work that was made to my garden wall when that was damaged when this was being built. I sincerely hope it's not going to be left like that. Moving on to our future concerns, as you're aware, there were 32 resident objections to this planning application. There were others who objected that weren't able to submit their comments online, so I'll speak for them. The main theme, as has already been discussed, is the parking. It's notoriously bad in our area, which was echoed in the letter that Penny Morden added in May of this year. So looking at the report that's been published, it says there's no difference in requirement of off-road parking spaces between a dwelling house and a C4 HMO. And I also recognise that storage for bikes has been included as required by the Council's adopted parking standards for HMO of this size. I would like some reassurance that the property's residents will comply with these requirements. How do I know that not all 5 of these residents will not have their own car? Can this be agreed to be part of the tenancy agreement? We as residents are extremely concerned about this. The extra vans on the road have had a huge impact on our parking during the reservation. We don't want these parking pressures to become even worse. I came home from a day shift last Thursday at 8:30 p.m. and there was nowhere to park. I actually had to park in a local car park, which is unacceptable. It's a common occurrence for people to park on the corners of the road and double yellow lines. And there's a lot of ambulance that's come down our road, I think possibly due to the doctor's surgery at the end of our road. And I've seen for myself that the difficulty that they sometimes have passing through this road. I also wanted to discuss the impact on our living conditions, noise pollution that could be possible. It did say in the report that noise complaints from HMO properties is 9% compared with 1% from non-HMOs, which is a significant difference. I know there's been problems in neighbouring roads in the Hillsey area, reported in local news with crime and drug use. As a resident, I know this road. I know that particularly my end of the road is a quiet family road, great community spirit. Most people living in the proximity of this property are homeowners. The properties are well looked after, and we were concerned about the types of individuals that may be living in this house and potential for antisocial behaviour. I really hope that if this is approved today, that the property owner, Mr Vanderberg, will consider our concerns, work with us as residents to try and keep the street as it is, quiet, clean community, and avoid the occurrences of some of the problems that have been faced in other areas of the city that have a higher rate of HMO properties. Thank you.
So I missed you out at the beginning, Rebecca, and thank you very much for coming along today and for waiting for so long. Yes, a question I have is generally, as I do, about the communal area. When we reject these sorts of plans, and they do get rejected sometimes, we would go into the communal space in detail. So again, we find a proposal that combines the kitchen together with, and I can't see what it says, I'm terribly sorry, I've got a small screen here, but what does it say on page 63 or 43, whichever one you're looking at? It shows a table, I think, with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 chairs around it. What is that sort of running alongside, parallel to the table? The writing's so small I cannot read it. What does it say that is?
Chair, I think these are wall units for the kitchen, I believe. I agree, it is very, very small. I can ask the planning officer to confirm.
You're probably right. So really and truly, this is a kitchen and dining area combined. And the communal space, is that measured wall to wall, or from the beginning of the units across to the wall? So you've got, in other words, the floor area rather than the room.
The measurements are taken from the inside of the wall, so these are sort of internal usable space. And the requirement was 24 square metres, they're providing 25.31.
Yeah, forgive me for labouring the point. So it's from wall to wall, and includes the cupboards there.
Yes, it's wall to wall.
So if you then say the cupboards are not part of the communal space, I mean, I can't see anybody climbing into a cupboard and sitting and relaxing and so on. Forgive me for being like this, but they're not going to sit in a cupboard and relax, are they? And so the area will be reduced further.
Strictly speaking, Chair, yes, that's correct, but the measurements in the SPD would be taken from wall to wall and internal distances. Clearly there's internal units, furniture, etc. Always, but it complies with the SPD.
Okay, so you know full well that we've rejected some of these where the configuration of the communal space with things jutting out into it and have reduced, and the planning inspector has agreed with us when we've done this, that the communal area is not sufficient. And including the kitchen, that's wall to wall again?
Yes, these are wall-to-wall measurements of dimensions provided. I can say in terms of the small writing that refers to a washing machine and a tumble dryer.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, washing machine and tumble dryer under the cooking elements?
The cookers at the other end.
Sorry?
Cookers at the other end, in the really far extension.
That's correct, in the extension.
So what are these little circles on top of
So the washing machine and the tumble dryer at the bottom end next door to one of the ensuite bedrooms.
I can point out with a laser pointer.
Down there. So you've got the tumble dryer and the washing machine right by somebody's bedroom. So it's not a communal space really, is it? It's not really a communal space. Not in my books, and I don't know what other members are going to say. This is the kitchen. Okay. There's no communal space in this place as far as I can make out. Members, sorry Rebecca, we can't come back. Councillor Vernon Jackson.
First of all, is it possible to look at the picture of the rear of the property about how much of the garden is left with the extensions in it? Just to have an idea of how close does that get to the rear boundary wall or the rear boundary of the property?
Just bear with me, Councillor. If I just go to, I don't actually have a block plan on the presentation, but if you see the laser pointer here, this is the property. I mean, there's still, these are just informal comments, but I would suggest that you've got about another 4 to 5 metres to the end of the garden and beyond that rear extension.
And that is acceptable under government regulations for permitted development?
Well, yes, this would still provide an adequate level of amenity for the property, and it would comply with the SPD.
So this fits with what the government says is okay?
Yes, officers recommending approval.
Okay. Second question, in terms of parking standard, it's a terraced house. In terms of the government's NPPF and their planning policy the government impose on us, what powers does the City Council have to turn this down on grounds of parking? In a sustainable way. There's no point, it seems to me there's no point us turning something down knowing that the government inspector is just going to pass it later. We're just giving people false hope and that's not sensible. So in reality, with the government's parking standards, what chance have we got if we turn this down for lack of parking?
Thank you, Councillor. The chance would be very slim. The highway officer has been consulted to raise no objection on the basis that the standard for the proposal would be 0.5 spaces more than the current situation, and on that basis, whilst recognising that the street is quite heavily parked, doesn't feel it could be a sustainable refusal reason or defended on appeal.
Okay, and my third question is there's been from deputations a concern about not wanting a house of multiple occupation here. In terms of government policy, and again, being able to sustain a refusal if we wanted to refuse it here locally, we have a policy that limits it at 10%. Other councils don't have any limits, but we have a 10% threshold. If we wanted a threshold that was lower, so it says 1.25% here, would government policy allow us to be able to turn it down at a level of just 1.25% house of multiple occupation in a 50-metre radius?
Well, Councillor, we obviously determine the application against the development plan and the supplementary planning documents that we've adopted that go with that. That is obviously against the guidance in the MPPF, but I think without question, given that this proposal falls well within the adopted SPD standards, it would be very difficult to defend that on appeal.
But we've got our standards because of what we can persuade the government inspectors to accept. If we came into a lower standard at 5% or 2% and imposed this on the city, would that get through the government inspectors?
No, I do not think that would be the case.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Just to tease out that point, I mean, you might be coming to Twyford Avenue, Councillor Smythe. You remember there was, I'm sure the officers will agree with me, that we recently did reject an application because it was insufficient by 0.5, half a car parking space in Twyford Avenue, and the planning inspector did not agree with us. You agree? Yeah. So I put it in the form of a question. Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got one question. I think notwithstanding concerns that have been about the size of the kitchen living room, we do count that as communal space, and it is above the standard. However, it does say in the report on page 4666 that bedroom 5 is potentially a double room, which would mean 6 people. What is the officer's view of that, and would that make any difference to the required size of the communal areas that are there if it's going to be 6 people there? And of course, yeah.
That would still fall within the definition of C4, so it would still not be dissimilar to the number of people that could occupy under C3 in any event.
Yes, I understand that. So that's presumably why they've shown 6 chairs there. But thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Stagg.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, on what basis the 1.5 cars for a 3-bedroom house and 2 for a 4-bedroom house is based? Is it based on the availability of parking spaces, the amount of land that's available, or is it just this a number just plucked out of the air? The reason I ask this is because at the moment Portsmouth is past saturation point for parking. We have on average 1.3 cars registered to each household in the city. If you take that, if you include commercial vehicles, that goes up to 1.5. Now, for the majority of houses in the city, there is only room for one car, one vehicle outside each house, unless you have off-road parking. So we're past saturation point. So adding an extra 1.5 vehicles is just mad, in my opinion. But is there any basis for that number of vehicles?
Thank you, Councillor. The applicants didn't provide a parking survey in support of the application, but the highway officer has been consulted, and there's effectively, for a existing 3-bed dwelling, the requirement would be 1.5 spaces. Obviously this is on the street like the rest of the properties along there. The standard applicable for the HMO is for 4+ bedrooms, so potentially larger, and that increases it to 2. So it's a net shortfall of 0.5.
But that's not answering my question. What I want to know is who has decided this 1.5 or 2, and what is it based on? Because if it's based on availability of parking spaces, that is impossible in Portsmouth. So I just want to know where that amount is coming from. Who's decided on it? What wonderful individual has decided on it?
Well, the parking standards are adopted standards. Clearly that's gone through its own process of consultation and approval. As with all, it's not dissimilar to other parking standards across many local authorities. So I wasn't involved in the details behind its adoption, but it does carry weight in the determination of this application.
So basically it's mad because it's not based on availability of parking spaces. I'm not accusing you, I'm just...
If I could help, Councillor,
yes.
It's part of the local plan that was adopted by the City Council with the advice of traffic officers in relation to the traffic part of the local plan.
Well, I think that needs to be revised.
About to look at it again.
Gents, sorry, Councillor Hooper.
Sorry, I just want to be a little more, as we're talking about this 1.5, this may sound a bit anal, but I'm really confused. 1.5, what's that, a Volvo in a smart car? Because you don't have 0.5 of a car, do you? You have to round it up. I'm really confused about that figure, 1.5, 0.5. Where does that come from?
Councillor, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, obviously these are multipliers. So for the purposes of new build housing estates, you'd sort of multiply 1.5 per number of dwellings or number of 3-bed dwellings being provided. For an existing property, yes, I appreciate there's no such thing as 1.5 car, but it's a judgment ultimately that officers will take. Looking at the standard, there's a modest shortfall from what is required for the HMO against that standard. Yes, it doesn't equate to half a car, but ultimately it feeds into the determination that we make as officers and the highway officer as well, and he's advised that in view of that modest shortfall, the development, he couldn't stand in the way or defend it on appeal.
Councillor Smythe.
I just wanted to ask a question. The building work has completed her now. I've got every sympathy with yourself about the noise of building work. We've got it going on next door at the moment, but it does come to an end. So, but I have every sympathy with that. But while development's going on, it is always very hard. Has it finished, the work?
Thanks, Councillor. The officer's site visit was earlier this year, and the photographs there too. So I'm not able to confirm that, but it might be. I would expect them to be coming to completion by now. That's all I can say. Yeah, it was substantially completed based on these photographs.
So basically, it's mad. Because if it's based on availability of parking spaces, then it's impossible in Portsmouth.
I'm trying to inform myself, but there's a big document, the SPD. Can you give me the definition, do you think, of a shared living space? Is it within the document of what it actually says, what it means? What is shared living space? What qualifies as shared living space? Communal areas, in other words, shared communal area.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of the document to hand.
I would like to know.
Okay, Chair, I've got a copy of the SPD now. Combined living space is defined as a single, typically open plan space, usually containing a kitchen, dining area and living area, laundry and utility space.
So this fits the definition then?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, any other? Councillor Smythe.
I just wondered if you were ready to move on to comments and decision.
Any other questions, members? Any comments? Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the Deputy for coming. I share many of your concerns. So actually, just as a point of context, I actually went to view a house before Christmas in Chad, in this road, but on my side, in the Copner ward, because it shares a boundary. And I was horrified by how tiny these houses are inside. And of course they look big, you know, with wide angle lenses and the tricks of the trade from the letting agents, etc. and sales agents. But I was shocked by how small they are. And I think I share your concern, Chair, that often we've welcomed high quality HMOs because that's what's needed, especially for independent people that need a property to live in that's their own, and many of them will be young professionals. But we have recently seen a number of applications coming forward like this, where they do seem to fit the definition of cram them in. Get as many people as they can into a narrow property, dress it up, you know, however they like, with lots of building works, etc. But the reality is that communal living space is tiny, and it is the bare minimum of our own policy of what is acceptable. And so based upon that, I'll be voting against this. And I think that there are a number of principles that we would be able to consider, where we'd be able to vote this down on. One of them is the actual principle of development. Now, this road specifically has had a lot of problems, and as the Deputy points out, around Hewitt Road and some other neighbouring roads. So with another hat on, even though these areas sit outside of my ward boundaries, there are crossovers because of the wider antisocial and parking aspects, etc. So, you know, as many of you will be aware, especially people that are in the south, you know, lots of things kind of cross over different areas. But there's been a lot of antisocial behaviour stuff here. In fact, one of the residents of that road is now serving a custodial sentence and will probably die in prison. You know, the problems are many here. And I think that actually we've seen a move probably within the last 3 to 4 months alone. So very recently, together with the police, you know, the legal system, etc., to actually start to see this area moving back into a much nicer residential area. I really don't think that this application is going to add to that aspiration of returning this area back into a much nicer residential place to live. I think the parking, okay, that's something we could sit here and debate all day long. You know, it's without a doubt, while we're talking about 1.5 spaces or whatever, and our policy does, I think, definitely need to be revisited, and welcome news from the leader of the City Council that indeed is in the plans. But the reality is there's no condition that we can put upon the people that will be moving in there as tenants to not bring their cars. And The reality is, if someone wants to drive, they're going to, and it's going to further impact on that area. I really don't think there's any solution on that, and there's nothing that we can do. But based upon that, and that this is already a road that is very, very problematic in terms of parking, as the Deputy mentioned, and I know this because I've had casework, I'm sure my Hillsey colleagues have had casework, Councillor Peter Harris and Jonas, that people do park on those corners, and it's especially, it impacts especially on disabled people and wheelchair users, let alone people doing the school runs, etc., because of course it's very close to the local schools. It's problematic, and as a council, we don't have the facilities to deal with things like that in real terms either. So, for example, when somebody's been reported blocking the dropped curbs, etc., on the corners of those roads, it gets reported to the council. Quite often it can be outside of the times that we're open. By the time that we've actually eventually sent somebody down to look into that, they've gone, they've moved. The problem's already been created. The person's been inconvenienced, disabled person, mum taking kids to school, whatever, and then those people just come back, and so it's an ongoing problem. And so the other main thing as well from the main issues for consideration, I think the amenity impact is probably covered by some of the stuff that I've just mentioned with regards to neighbouring residents, and certainly the information that's been presented today by Councillor Daniel Weems and by the Deputy here, I think has gone into quite a lot of detail about the negative impacts that will have, least of all the other additional issues in this street. And the fact that this is, in my opinion, a low-quality HMO application. As I said earlier, we always welcome high-quality ones. And actually, I think through the work chaired by yourself, I would like to just say, I think that a lot of landlords and developers have actually sat up and said, OK, we need to be compliant because we've got a tough chair, planning committee, and actually we want to do good by the people that we're putting into our developments. This does not seem to be the case here, so I'll be voting against this application.
Councillor Vernon Jackson.
I'm sorry, I know we got into comments, but if you just excuse, I have great deal of sympathy for everything Councillor Rodney has said, and I would always look for things to turn HMOs down where we've got a leg to stand on. The only one I can see here is that it says bedroom 5 is a double, so it hits all the space standards. But the combined living kitchen area is for 3 to 5 people, not for 6. The bit above says it does hit the requirement for 6-person HMO, but in which case, why does the grid below say that it's only a combined living kitchen area for 3 to 5 people at 25 square metres?
I think to clarify, and looking at the plans actually in the main report, the applicants have stated on their drawings each bedroom is for single use. Clearly it's a large bedroom at the top of the house, but that is what the applicants have said, and potentially we could add a condition on that basis that limits occupants to 5.
Okay, which would be sensible. I have a great deal of sympathy for everything Councillor Rodney has said and the people who come to talk to us. My problem here is that I can't see within government policy a way of turning this down, which is going to be sustained when it gets to appeal. And giving people false hope just because it might make people feel nice at a meeting is not what we need to do. So the parking issue, we've been told we won't be able to win an appeal because it's half a space less. The permitted development right, that extension is clearly a real problem for neighbours and is horrible, but sits within government policy to allow that. Having HMOs, we've got limits we can say no to if there are more than 10% in an area, but the advice is we can't say no lower than that because of government policy. So we can either, and I absolutely sympathise with everything Councillor Rodney has said, and I'd agree with it all, but I don't think the government give us any realistic ability to to say no and defend it. And I think we've done brilliant at that, and I think the Chair has been absolutely excellent at going after HMO developments which are substandard and don't hit the space requirement. And we had a report today at the beginning of the meeting where we turned one of those down because it didn't hit the space requirement, and we sustained that appeal. But this does hit all the space requirements. So I think if we're going to go on the lines of turning it down, we're going to do it knowing, and we need to be absolutely upfront about this, that the government inspector will give it permission. All we'll be doing is giving false hope to residents because government policy is absolutely clear. But I think we need to be clear that maybe actually we should see if we could get government policy changed. And I'm interested that the MP for Portsmouth North, who's a very powerful person, a member of the Cabinet, has written here to object. And I think maybe what we should do from this committee is write to the MP for Portsmouth North to ask her to get the bits of government policy that cause real problems to local families changed. So to write to the MP for Portsmouth North to be able to say, please get the parking standards changed and the way in which the government give us the power to do that. Can you get that changed and give us in this committee the power to say no to things if people are not providing enough the right amount of car parking? Likewise, the MP in Portsmouth North, please can you get the rules for permitted development changed so this terrible extension should not have been built, but government policy says it's all right, and that's absolutely wrong. And we need to get the MP for Portsmouth North, who's in the Cabinet, to get that changed. And likewise, the ability to say no to HMOs. We have no ability in an area below 10% to be able to say no to an HMO. If an MP for Portsmouth North can get that changed to a lower threshold, that would benefit lots of people who have these concerns. So I think we should write to the MP Portsmouth North, who has written in about this planning application, to ask her to change these areas of government policy, which mean that we have no options. We'd love to support local residents, but government policy gives us no option to help people. And if the MP for Portsmouth North can get that changed, we will cheer her from the rafters across all parties. I'd love to support Councillor Rob New's thing, but I think in doing so, I will be doing it just to try to make people happy today, knowing that the government inspector will say yes to this anyway because it hits all the government policies. And I don't think that we should be in the position of trying to fool residents that we can say no to this when the government policy gives us no ability to do so. But maybe the MP for Portsmouth North can change that so in future, when planning applications come, we're not left in this terrible position.
Chairman, just as a point of order really for some of the things that Councillor Vernon Jackson said. First of all, Penny Mordaunt MP is not in the Cabinet. Secondly, just on the own line of thought as the leader of the City Council has just put out about not misleading people, everybody here knows that this is a public meeting being broadcast, and single MP, especially somebody outside the Cabinet, does not have the ability or power to get things like that changed. By all means, do write to her, but let's just be clear about what can be expected.
Right, thank you both very much.
I have great confidence in her.
Yeah, thank you both very much indeed. Councillor Smythe, then I'm going to say something.
And with a slightly heavy heart, I'd like to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation here for all the reasons that Councillor Vernon Jackson has given. And I do have a heavy heart about it. I think that extension is problematic, and I do think it's a good idea if we could try and get central government policy changed on this point. And indeed, I think the local plan will, to some extent, address some of our concerns with the new policy. But just at this present time, we have, I think, no choice but to approve this, and I'd like to move that, please.
Okay, so I'll come to that in a moment. And I'm listening to everything everybody says. Clearly, I'll take these matters very... I have a different view.
And the condition about limiting it to 5 residents, which I think
we'll
Councillor Jackson also proposed.
So I have a different view. I'm particularly concerned about the bedroom which is adjacent to the kitchen and a loo in what looks like the hallway. For my own purposes, I've labelled it bedroom 1, gents. Can you see it? Just by. So I don't know what the walls will be made of. They'll probably be stud walls. But that's right by the kitchen area. It's got tumble dryer and whatnot in that communal area, we're told. You've got maybe 6 people sat down to dinner or something. And these are going to be shift workers going in and out probably, or whatever. So my argument is that in relation to that bedroom, that this is an overdevelopment of the property, and that would have an adverse impact on the enjoyment of living there, the residential amenities for people living in the property. So I don't know if I will get a seconder for that, but I do believe that this is an overdevelopment, coin a phrase, cram 'em in development, and that it is unfortunate that bedroom is right there in order to put more people into the house. I think it's very badly located, so that's my proposition.
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay then, so, but we have the first one on the table that's already been seconded, Councillor New, which is put by Councillor Vernon Jackson, seconded by Councillor Smythe, so we have to go there first. That's right, isn't it?
I don't think Councillor Vernon Jackson proposed anything.
That is true.
Okay, so at the moment we have a proposition by Councillor Smythe. Is her proposal for the report seconded or not?
No, Chair, it's not been seconded so far.
Anyone want to second?
I'm happy to second it.
Okay, so the proper...
with the addition of the writing of the letter to the MP for Portsmouth North.
Okay, that's noted in the thing. So we've got a proposition on the table which is from me first of all, seconded by Councillor New. If that one doesn't win, then we'll go to Councillor Smythe's proposition. That's correct order, isn't it?
Yes, Chair. The planning officer may wish to comment on the proposal.
Yeah, thank you for the nudge. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. Are we including the condition limiting it to 5 residents?
Yes, indeed. In my proposition, limit it, well, yes, limit it to 5, but at the moment I'm saying to reject it on the grounds of overdevelopment and the adverse impact on the future residential amenities of the occupiers, the intended occupiers.
Thank you, Chair. That one is noted. I was wondering about Councillor Smythe's recommendation.
Yes, she's putting that in.
Yes, I mean, there is some ambiguity in the report, and I think both Councillor Vernon Jackson and I would like it to be limited to 5.
Okay, so we're clear on one vote. All those in favour of my proposition to reject, please show. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, it's rejected. I think that's the end of the meeting, everybody. Thank you all very much indeed for coming along.
Thank you, Chair.